Well, good morning, everybody. 11 o'clock Friday morning, an off-scheduled day time for me to do I don't even know what the hell you call this. Uh, fuck. It is what it is, but I just wanted to jump in here. Let me see. I'm going to open up my window for X. There we go. Welcome, welcome any viewers that we may have from X. Also, welcome any viewers we might have from Yahoo, and also those people there on the Rumble. Let me kill the volume on Rumble. There we go. Want to make sure we don't get any interference. But there is some interesting stuff going on, folks. And I've seen a few streamers cover it. And, there's times where I've been wrong, but apparently I've been right more often than I've been wrong when it comes to this. So let me think here. Expert winner, let me think here. I don't want to see it. I want to bring this up. Text messages. Here. I want to bring up the issue of text messages with Dylan Mortenson and her dad. Okay. And I could present this document. I'm not going to get into the guy's qualifications. But I'm going to present page 3, I believe it is. Page 2 of 2. Let's see if we can present that without any big issues and go and get into what this is. The Chrome tab. Will this show what I'm looking for? Let's see if it does. There we go. Listen, I think a lot of creators are missing the boat, and I think a lot of the boat is being missed not because of their some of these people are very knowledgeable and they do put in a lot of hard work, and so that can't be denied. And I don't want to specifically mention streamers or anything because I am going to be a little critical here. So I don't want anybody to feel offended. You know me, I don't want to offend nobody. Go fuck yourself. Anyway, I should have been born with Tourette's because I had to be a good fucking person for that disease. Let's see, what do we got here? Go to the comments. Go to the comments. Glad you're on. Let's have your take on it. Well, here's what I want to point out, folks. So, you have an expert in all things to do with your phone and all of these other software programs you run on them, TikTok and all this other happy horse shit. And here's what this guy is going to be a part of. Worrying about text messages, okay? Between Dylan Mortenson and her father. And I pointed this out to the streamers that I think are the streamers that do put in enough work to try to connect these dots. And I've connected so many dots in the very beginning that have all come out to be true all the way through this process that that it's only been, as time has passed where we can look back and say, yeah, he did make that point. Yeah, he did that. And I'm not doing that so that I can show people that I'm right. I guess what I want to try to share with people is how I make these deductions and why I make these deductions. And in some cases, it's because I read documents when I said there were 3 places on the sheet that were searched. And it apparently that's true now. And not even apparently, that is true. The button snap, the inside of the loop, and the sheet itself. Those are the 3 locations that were actually searched. And I said that a year and a half ago, and Jules of all trades attacked me and told me I was making up fake information. Well, now we know that to be fucking true. It was true then, it was true the whole way through because it was written in a document provided to us by the state. Now here we go again with more documents. And these documents do say something. To me, they're talking about a time period that obviously we weren't given. The time period between 4:37 a.m. and 7:30 in the morning are absent in the text messages that we have seen. They're absent. Something happened. Okay? Something fucking happened between 4:37 and 7:30 a.m. and it wasn't fucking people sleeping. Okay? Now we get this document. This guy tells you who he is. He's been retained as a digital forensic expert, DFE. And so what he's looking at is this. The documents include artifacts and content demonstrating a variety of user interactions, including incoming and outgoing native text messages, incoming and outgoing Snapchat message artifacts indicated by the application, identifier, com, Toya page group, peekaboo. I don't know what that means and I can't say it properly, but it's written in this document. Voice and video calls conducted via Snapchat and the native phone dialer. Creation, modification, and deletion of multimedia files such as images and videos. Application usage logs showing when specific apps were opened and closed. Internet browsing artifacts and cookie data showing access to particular websites or internet-based services. I declare under penalty of perjury that this foregoing is true and correct to the best of my knowledge, skill, and belief. Listen, I'm suggesting, folks, that what this gentleman is going to put forward is going to be discussions on the time that we have never had disclosed to us. We know these girls' phones were active from 7:30 forward, but the question is, why do their texts start at 7:30? I've maintained that they never stopped using their phones, that they didn't go to sleep, and that in fact what this gentleman is going to testify to is conversations or interactions Dylan had with her father, which I suspect is going to show that Dylan knows way more than this fucking guy in black with a vacuum cleaner on his ass, okay? This to me is it's stunning that so many streamers aren't willing or aren't able to connect the missing text period of 3 hours. Actually, it's not 3 hours. It's 2 hours and 53 minutes if we want to be accurate. 2 hours and 53 minutes of no phone activity from either one of the survivors, if you want to call them that. And I'd like to know, like my title says, what the fuck were you doing, Dylan Mortenson, and what is your role in this nightmare of these young women and men and man slaughtered like this? What do you know? What part of it were or were you not? Were you? Did you have a role in this, And what the fuck happened between 4:37 a.m. and 7:30 a.m. that they've not released to the public? And to me, that's what makes this guy's interaction and his involvement in the case. His name is Josh P. Roloff, which is almost, that's like dumpsters. Roll off, right? Roll off dumpster for guys in the trade. They may know what that is. But to me, this begs the question. How in the hell aren't we pointing at this out? How are streamers not trying to understand or even trying to get this answered? This should be a hot topic for everybody. Who is this guy? And we know what he's looking at. Voice and video calls conducted via Snapchat. Here's the point I want to make, and this is how I think. I'm going to explain to you why I make this deduction. Because very little of what he says in here, okay? Very little of what he says in here is covered in the times that they've released to us. They show us these text messages in consecutive order, folks. They don't show any room for deletion. They show these conversations and these interactions with these two girls, and there's probably many other people that were involved in these calls or these texts or this interaction that we don't know about. But why did they leave blank 2 hours and 53 minutes? That is, to me, is where this guy comes in. This is where the alternative perpetrator defense comes in. This gentleman will help establish the potentiality of other perpetrators doing this crime other than Brian Kober. That to me is what makes this man's introduction to us this late in the game. That's what makes his to me, the value that he provides to the defense is specifically that time period of 4:37 a.m. until 7:30 a.m. And I conclude that because there's nothing in the released text messages that goes to the points that he's making. Nothing that I'm aware of. Maybe some of them or some of what he's going to testify to will cover the time. How about the time from 9 at night, the night before, on the 12th, 9 p.m.? How about 6 p.m.? How about a 1 a.m. on the 12th? How about 1 a.m. on the 12th? Right? 27 hours prior to when they claim this case took place. How about those periods of time? Is he going to interact with that? Is he going to show us a complete detail and an outline? Is he going to go after the phones of Dylan and her father to show that Dylan knew more at 4:37 a.m. than she let on at 12 p.m. or 11:56 a.m. when the police were called? Is there evidence on that phone that'll show her aware that she was aware of what happened in this home long before? I mean, just look at how she approached the 911 call. Can I tell you something about 4 a.m.? Is that a conversation based on fact, or is she trying to build an alibi? Was her and her interaction with her father a nefarious way to try to cover up her knowledge and or direct involvement in this crime? What the fuck were these people doing between 4:37 a.m. and 7:30 a.m.? Where is that data? What does that data show? What is that data pointing to? I can't see this guy's presence in this case for anything other than that specific period of time. A period of time that we're not being given. Just like we haven't been given a whole bunch of shit. A whole bunch of shit. Now, there's no way anybody that has two brain cells can conclude that a car was even part of this crime. Specifically, the car they claim as suspect vehicle 1 is having any involvement in this crime at all. It doesn't even seem like it's possible at this point. What's up there, Donald Denice from Twitch? And that's why I think Dylan needs to be confronted. What did you know before, during, and after this crime that we're not being told? What was your conversations with your father, and why your father and not the police? What the fuck is going on, Dylan? What did you do? Dear God, what did you do? There's more to this. Now the prosecutors are stepping aside. Why are the two prosecutors stepping aside for this Biden shrill from the fucking Idaho attorney generals or whatever, the Idaho, whatever he is? He's some high-ranking Fed. Why are there now more Feds being ingested into this case? Why has the FBI's involvement been kept secret? Why has everything been kept sealed and secret? What the fuck really happened here? And look, I'm not saying Kohlberger wasn't involved, but holy shit. The chaos surrounding this case, the lies, the misdirection, the narrative that was built by the mainstream media on behalf of the fucking Idaho police is just crazy. It's crazy. If this guy owns a glove, that proves he committed the crime. If he owns a mask, if he bought a K-bar, these are not fucking evidence of a man that committed a crime. These are a story trying to get you to believe in a story. Now, here's a story that you need to really try to understand. What in the fuck is this expert? What in the hell is he going to testify to that we've yet to fucking see? What has he got that we don't have? That's the only question that matters in this gentleman's involvement here. See if I can blow that up. People can read what he's saying, right? I have reviewed the documents titled DN 11.13 bubble format and BM 11.13 bubble format, which contain data extracted from mobile devices used by individuals identified as DM and BM, respectively. These documents reflect periods of activity on the mobile devices that will require user interaction with the device for them to occur, especially for the date of November 13, 2022. Let's be very clear. That's from 12 a.m., okay, until 12 a.m., right? A 24-hour period. So in the a.m. hours until 11:59 p.m. on November 13th. She has 24 hours and he has 24 hours of phone activity. What was the fuck going on that makes it relevant to this case? Why is anything these two young girls have anything added to this case that puts in doubt and in question their involvement or non-involvement? Why is that even now finally coming forward after 2.5 years? Oh, we found a knife at his house. No, you found 3 knives at his parents' home. But a knife in fucking Pennsylvania isn't a knife in Washington. Is the knife that you identified in your search warrant actually a K-bar knife? I've made this argument for a long time. They have a folding knife. They have a, I don't know, culinary knife in a sheath. And they have the word knife as their first find. The word knife, not butcher, not butter knife, not K-bar knife, not folding knife. No identification. And there isn't a knife in the world that doesn't come with identification. There isn't. You can't just have a knife. You have a steak knife, a butcher knife, a paring knife, a bread knife, a fucking butter knife. Yet they chose to only call it a knife. Is that a K-bar? And is that K-bar been excluded as having anything to do with the crime? And my bet is absolutely. Everything these people did is so half-assed and so jacked as to make no sense. The argument that a car was even a part of the crime isn't even an honest argument. Right, they want the word knife found at his house without an explanation so people can then opine about it. But I'm not opining about this expert's sudden burst onto the scene, okay, on 3/26/2025, right? That was just last week. Out of nowhere, this guy comes in and he tells us in his filing that he's concerned with text messages between Dylan and her father. What in the fuck is going on with this? Why hadn't we known that for the last 2.5 years? This is why I get really upset with people that choose innocence or guilt, and they want to debate, and they want to take these facts and twist them out of context. I am not twisting this out of context. We know for a fact that there's a 2-hour and 53-minute period of time of nothing. And now we have this guy coming forward. Now we know that her father has some communications with, or is directly communicating with her. And the question is, how is that relevant to this case? It's absolutely mind-fucking to get this to come forward, for this gentleman to all of a sudden come out from behind the curtain. And as far as I can see, folks, his involvement is devastating for the prosecution. Why has the prosecution held this evidence from the public? Why was all of this sealed? I don't really give a fuck if you used IGG to come up with a name. I don't argue against that. I do have an issue if once you have a name, you go to the infinite degree of forcing evidence to create a story, not providing me evidence that's conclusive on its face. Let me explain that. If a car is involved, I want you to be able to identify and connect it to the name that you found in that IGG report. It's not that fucking difficult. If your video that you claim to be the same car over and over and over again, and you refer to as headlights that would be consistent with, that motherfucking shit isn't evidence. It isn't evidence unless you can show conclusively that the vehicle that you claim to have tracked and that you have all of this data on is in fact in the possession of and or is owned by and mainly is absolutely unconditionally, unquestionably operated by Brian Christopher Kohlberger. Now all of a sudden you're seeing these two prosecutors take a back seat to a Joe Biden federal cuckold. Okay? Here's a guy that his claim to fame is getting drug dealers off the street, yet we have fucking, who is that girl? Emily and her boyfriend that were arrested for a man dying from their drugs and then released because of a jurisdictional issue. Is he the motherfucker that got them released? Are these people that were informants for him? Is this the kind of law enforcement that we want prosecuting a case? Is this guy connected to Emma Bailey and that her boyfriend? Is he the one that got the jurisdictional issue to pull them out of fucking jail and get those charges dismissed? Is this Fed that now is going to take over the Idaho 4 connected to that? These are questions the streamers need to be looking at. And these are dots that anybody with a fucking 2 brain cells should be able to connect if you've been watching this. Me connecting this particular new guy's info to the 3 hours of missing time and text messages should be an obvious thing. And look at Harsh and Truth and Transparency and Miss Potts and a whole bunch of people out there. I've yet to see them connect that 3-hour missing period of text and phone usage. I've yet to see them connect it to this particular person's introduction into that case. And even though there's no conclusive evidence to say that's why he's here, well, you're dropping the fucking ball not to make that connection. You literally are dropping the ball. Okay? Don't worry about people talking shit about you or calling you names or making fun of you or arguing back with you. Until we know what this person is going to testify to, it only makes sense that he's not going to testify to what we know to be obvious fucking communications. There's just no sense in putting somebody up there to say, yeah, we could tell she used the phone to say, I'm fucking screwed. And I meant I'm fucking scared. You don't need this guy to tell you that what the text messages that you've seen are valid. You just don't need that confirmation, okay? What you need a person like this to do is to discuss communications that have yet to be released. That's what you need. That's what somebody like this is going to do. Remember, the defense is that other people did this. Who? What do you know, Dylan? What do you fucking know? What were you talking about to your dad? What the hell was that all about? What's going on here? And this should have been discussed 2.5 years ago when, I got to give Cluminati credit. But even before I ever met Cluminati, I was the only person I knew that was willing to dig into Bethany and Dylan. Not as victims, but as suspects, as they always should have been. You were there before, during, and after the crime. Not because Sergeant Friday said so, but because you motherfuckers said it to the police. And everything you did connects to the only thing I can say for sure about those two young women, with absolute certainty, with Dylan, I can't do this with Bethany, but with Dylan, she places herself before, during, and after the crime in that fucking house. That's the only thing Dylan has ever said that I can trust, right? These two young girls should have been treated like their name was Dave and Bob, not Dylan and Bethany, the two bleached blonde innocent victims. And you lunatics that see them that way really need your fucking heads examined. Don't come to me for it, because you ain't going to like it, okay? I remember when I went through a rehab 30 years ago, and they wanted to hire me on and pay for my training to be a counselor. And I said that wouldn't work, because I really wouldn't have anybody to counsel, because 99% of these fucking people are going to continue to be drug addicts, and I don't want to hang out and work with drug addicts. I'm a drug addict. I'm not going to be a drug addict, and I haven't been for 30 years. Okay? I found my bottom and turned the fucking corner. But I was not going to fucking sit around and try to give therapy to people that just weren't even in any fucking sane mind and body to accept therapy. You can't get therapy your way out of a fucking addiction, okay? To me, that's not what therapy is for. You can't convince no motherfucker to stop doing what they're doing. Anyway, back to the topic. What do these two young girls know? What did they know the night of that crime? What did they know prior to that crime? God forbid, right? What did they know prior to that fucking crime? Which one, if not both of them? It's absolutely insane. And this gentleman's appearance is like, whoa, where did this guy come from? And I think it's only fair, right? I don't know who Samantha Nelson is. They're open-minded perspectives. I don't know how people can assemble information but not daisy chain them in a line. I don't know how people are unable to do that, or they're shied away, or they're worried others are going to think this or that. Maybe because I have the freedom and don't need an income from any of this. I never ever paused as to what ramifications this may or may not cause me. I don't really look at it that way. I don't care. She's more than just an alcoholic. You should tell someone that. No, tell that. I don't know who Samantha is. It's Steve's disowned daughter. I don't know. I don't really care about them people as much as I just find this to be the most staggering piece of information dropped recently that's not getting any scrutiny. The idea that people still want to talk about the car or Linda Lane. I don't even know how your brain could be that fucking stupid. I mean, the evidence that they've shown you shows you that they cannot identify. Look, I started considering the Elantra as a distraction the minute Officer Payne said on the stand that not any phone, nor video can identify Brian Koberger in his car. The minute Brett Payne said that on the stand, that told me that this was a red herring. This whole narrative about the fucking car is an attempt to create a lie, to sell to the public, to sell to a jury. They're telling you what you're seeing, and there's no evidence to prove what you're seeing because they keep going back to the transfer DNA. And that's not how a conviction should be done. Correspondence with her back and forth a couple of years now. She's going through rehab, and she's much worse than you could possibly imagine. Well, does she have any direct connection to this case? Was she there? Can you place her in the vicinity, in the home, or in the neighborhood, or in the town? Other than that, I don't know who this woman is. Everything seems fine to Mr. Gonclaves. He's okay with it. He understands. Well, I don't see Mr. Gonclaves as anybody that should be paid attention to at all. This guy is suffering from Stockholm syndrome. He believes the story. And even though his gut may twitch every now and then, or a little jot of adrenaline may start to leak into his system when he reads some of this stuff, he has only one avenue to find justice, revenge, or whatever you want to call a parent that lost a child's motive. I don't know, and I don't really care, and I don't think it's fair to even discuss his motive. So, I said it, and I shouldn't have. But this guy's only hope is what the police have been telling him. Come on. How many of you people believe in Big fucking Foot? And no matter what anybody says to you, you're just like, yeah. You'll agree just to get off the topic. But you really believe in Bigfoot. That's what this is about, folks, for the poor families that have survived this. Is she tied to this directly? Open mind. I hate to bring in people that can't be actually verified through the documents that have been released. And the only one that they claim to be identified through documentation is Brian Koberger, but Brian Koberger can't be identified by any of the information they've released. So is someone else involved in these crimes? I don't know. It's more likely than not, but that still doesn't tell me I know. Is Dylan involved in this? I don't know. For all intents and purposes, the answer to that question is no. However, all of this information that we're now seeing suggests there's a potential that there's something there. There's something there. Maybe out of fear, she's keeping quiet, or maybe for something that I'm not going to wrap my head around. I don't know. Her motive is her motive. In fact, she may have no motive at all other than she's completely innocent, like the newly driven snow. That's also true of Dylan. She could be as innocent as the driven snow in a blizzard. However, there's more questions about her, and there's more questions about these two young women now than there ever was. And the funny thing is, there should always have been questions about these two young girls. That's why I kind of like Clue. Because Clue really reminded me of something I should have known anyway, and I did know, but I ignore it when you see an attractive young woman. You treat them differently. I don't see anywhere in any of the documentation a story that Dylan Mortenson was placed independently in a police car, kept to herself, brought to the police station, put in a room with a female officer, and searched. Where's that? Because that's what's supposed to happen here. You can scream to the top of your lungs. You could suck every cop's dick, every cop's dick in the whole force. None of that should stop the police from doing their job. And I'm not saying she did that. I'm just using that as an extreme example. None of these people that were on the property should have been allowed to maintain any kind of communication. All their phones should have been confiscated, and each and every individual should have been paired off in a different car or a different location. And everyone should have been interviewed, and it never happened. Right? Nobody should have entered that crime scene without a hazmat suit. I don't care what anyone thinks or says, but if you're going to use the most microscopic piece of fucking information against me, and you're going to go in there like drunken fucking bums to find it, I can't give any credence to that. I can't accept that as evidence. I just can't. You bulldoze the crime scene. Because they told us the cops walked in and the 3 doors were standing open, that tells us that somebody from the group of people opened them doors. Why does it must tell us that because of the story that she called someone and she thinks her friends are unconscious. And she only concentrated on Zaina and Ethan. Maybe because Zaina and Ethan were the only 2 people that were supposed to have been affected by this. Okay. And I said this in the very beginning. Anybody unfamiliar with that home coming in through the sliding glass door would have completely felt that they were on the first story. There's no other way for a stranger to enter that home through a sliding glass door and not think that they're on the first floor. It's not fucking possible. If you're unfamiliar with the home. Then going up to the 3rd floor would have in fact been going up in your mind to the 2nd floor. There's just too many oddities here. And I really can't wrap my head around any outside intruder entering this home. There's no indication of that at all. The fact that those doors were found open by the police department tell me those doors were opened by somebody that A, was there the whole time, or B, showed up at the request of Dylan. And they left those doors open, which is just kind of freakish, man. But that's what we've now been given for information. Remember, there were things I told Dago. He didn't believe me, and it proved I wasn't lying. For now, it's got nothing to do with lying. I don't know why you take it personal, open-minded. I'm not calling you a liar. I'm just saying that if there isn't information to place this person solidly within the group of even the kids that showed up after, or interacting with these people during that evening directly, and or in that home, I won't consider it. I'm not saying you're lying. I'm not even saying you're wrong. What I'm trying to point out to people is that you could come up with 88 trillion reasons of who what did it. But Anne is going to do that. You'll see. Anne will do that. But she's going to base it on solid evidence that's verifiable, right? And what I'm trying to say is if we can't verify someone's presence, then I don't really want them in I don't even want them in my mind. I just don't. There's no need for them to be in my brain. Right now, the case is against Brian Koberger. The question before us is Mr. Koberger involved in the crime based on the data supplied by the prosecution? To me, that's the only important question as to who could have or who did do this crime. It's not relevant to me because that's not what's being put in our lap. We're not on some kind of investigative hunt here. Anne needs to dog them out and get, yeah. Look at who did it is not anything anybody's going to solve from their computer or cell phone. Most likely, the odds of that are astronomical. You're better off playing the lottery. And people's involvements at this point in time, unless they could be directly connected with evidence, direct evidence. That's what I'm asking for Brian Koberger. Show me direct evidence. Because DNA at a crime scene is circumstantial evidence. The fact he bought a K-bar, circumstantial evidence. That isn't direct evidence of anything involvement. He owns a mask. That's not direct evidence. That's circumstantial. All of that needs to be correlated into a series of events that unquestionably show his guilt. Well, I don't know about the movie Scream and how has that even got anything to do with Brian Koberger's accusations? I don't understand. I can't go down those rabbit holes like that. I just won't go down these rabbit holes in trying to determine who did it. I can't even say that Koberger's innocent. I won't even say that. I don't know that he's innocent. I don't know that he's guilty. But what I can surmise, based on data that they've shared with us and they've lied about, is that they don't have Brian Koberger's car in any camera. I don't care if it's a Hyundai Elantra or it isn't a Hyundai Elantra. I just don't care. That doesn't place that car into the scene of the crime. It just doesn't. So who cares? Show me that Mr. Koberger's vehicle was there that night, with evidence, not with your storytelling. I mean, storytelling has created people's thought and belief in UFOs, thought and belief in Bigfoot, and many, many, many other things, right? And I don't apply what I believe. I don't even apply well, I just don't believe. I don't believe that this gentleman's introduction into this case, this Joshua, is it Joshua? Josiah. I can't even say his name. I'm going to call him Mr. Roloff, just out of convenience. I don't know if Mr. Roloff's involvement is anything beyond the texts that we have. My summation of understanding it the way I view it is because that 3 hours of time is crucial. So is the times prior to the murder very crucial. So is the fact that they released a text she's asking the driver if he's still driving. That's got to have a piece in this. Understanding why all of a sudden now are we finding out that Dylan Mortenson had conversations with her father? Why is that only now coming forward? What conversations did she have with her dad? For what reason? Based on what? To me, those are relevant questions. So, well, you're not supposed to believe it, Dave. And let me just say, yes, a single man could have performed that act. No, listen, yes. The answer to the question is yes, 100%. Could one person have done this crime? Absolutely. Did they have to be a man? The answer to that question is no. Okay? So this is what I'm trying to say is when you think about stuff, folks, the unlikely doesn't mean it's impossible. Now, you physically may think you're unlikely capable of doing that. But there's a lot of things influencing your thought. First and foremost is you would never even consider doing that. You can't even wrap your head around why somebody would do something like this. To you, there isn't a good enough reason. Thank God most of us think that way. But in the world of reality, in the world of mankind, could one person go into this home and commit that crime? Yes, they could. Right? And it's a special kind of thing. Your view of the world has to be, wow, does it have to be completely unimaginable to most of us? Let's be clear. All right? You may have had a dream where you killed someone, but never in your conscious mind could you ever conceive committing a crime of this magnitude or even anywhere close to it. Right? So, you look at these people that jump out of their cars and they start like they're firebombing. They're firebombing Elon Musk. They're firebombing. They're scratching the car. Listen, this is the most amazing thing, and yet most Americans and all of the media and all of the talking heads are missing this particular point. That's the problem with people, and they don't think. You realize that the majority of Tesla owners are Democrat global warming people. And the minute even people that are Democrat global warming people, okay, disagree with the group will attack and destroy you. If that isn't the definition of fascism, if that isn't the definition of hate, if that isn't the definition of the KKK, what the fuck would be? Can you imagine? You're one of them people that bought an electric car to save the earth because you buy into that. And now they're attacking you got to be afraid to leave your car outside. Now the violent left, the Democrat fucking pieces of shit, the mindless fucking morons, right, are attacking themselves. Who's making this point? They themselves prove openly to the public they're the fascist KKK pieces of shit. You could have agreed with them from the fucking, before the sperm hit the fucking egg. You could have been born to these people. But now that you drive a Tesla, fuck you. Fuck you and your Tesla. You see? That's the definition. That's why I tried to cover the JFK issue. Because too many people are too fucking stupid to understand. Context makes everything simple to understand. They've brainwashed people to think that because Brian Koberger owns a white Elantra, he did it. Because he bought a knife, he did it. It's bullshit. That is a context surrounded by transfer DNA being found in a fucking snap. Take the transfer DNA out and you have no evidence against Mr. Koberger. None. You wouldn't want your kid fucking convicted of that. But too many people have been trained to believe and not think. Okay. And there's a lot. Look at it. And I'm not trying to say some of the streamers that haven't made this connection or don't give this connection a huge fucking you're trying to hit a home run with this connection, because every fucking thing the police have told us have all turned out to be either wrong, inaccurate, or like, what the fuck are they talking about? And when everything is that way, this thing also must be that way. You cannot change the stripes of a zebra. It is what it is. People will tell you who they are. And when your policemen are doing the kind of work they did up there, and now here's the next best fucking thing. Now they got a fucking a fucking federal prosecutor coming in for this case. And do you want to know why they're doing that, folks? My opinion is they're doing it. The why they're doing it is because Bill and the woman that he was hiding behind. Remember, Bill was the lead. Bill stepped back. This girl came forward, and now she's got to step back. Okay? Why is this happening? Why are these prosecutors all playing fucking hot potato with the job? Why isn't Bill the lead fucking prosecutor on every hearing and standing up and arguing these motions and fight? Why isn't he doing that? There's a reason for that. Now, why is this girl? Why are they bringing in some other prosecutor to go above this? I don't even know her name. I don't give a fuck what her name is. Why, folks? There's a reason to that. I can't tell you the exact reason other than these two particular prosecutors have done some fucked up shit in this case and other cases, and now they're trying to get themselves out of the way. Yeah, Ashley Jennings. They're trying to step back and let this guy take the limelight because they don't want the case to shine a light on them and their behavior. Ashley Jennings can't explain what Cy Ray's motion just said the other day. We all knew they had time in advance records in 2020 fucking 2. We all knew that. It wasn't like we were shocked when she came out and said, no, we didn't have any. This stuff is the only stuff you can use. We knew that was a lie. I don't know if the whole case is going to hinge on that. I don't necessarily agree with all of these people saying that the case will be dismissed over this, because this is something that the court system has known all along anyway. And you're really looking at a case that there's no way they're going to dismiss this. They'd rather find Brian Koberger not guilty and walk away than they would to fucking dismiss this charges and walk away. Let me be very clear, folks. That's because your government has become the fucking judge, jury, and executioner. And there's no punishment for these people. Prosecutorial discretion. That's what this all comes back to. Prosecutorial discretion. And they're protected under that, just like a policeman is protected. Just like Trump as the president is protected while performing his duties. You can't go after him for a lawfully executed performance of his duties. Why do you think you couldn't get George W. Bush for what he just started over there in fucking Iraq? It's the presidential's execution of his duties, into which he makes a decision based on available information. You can't call that a crime. That's where all these people are able to fucking hang their hat. That's the fucking problem. Steve G plays to the narrative of the media. He supports, he draws a crowd. He gets fucking advertiser money for these companies. Steve G going along with this narrative, and I think it's because of Stockholm Syndrome. Because Steve G has nowhere else to turn. Right? I'm disassociated from this crime, and so are all of you. You have no horse in this race. None. Your family hasn't been destroyed or turmoiled or, I listen, if any of the questions you'd like me to review are valid questions based on the data that we've been allowed to see, based on testimony in courts and information that's been made available to us, then I won't step outside of those bounds. I won't talk about other people or other locations. And when other people do, I think it's a tragedy. I think What they're doing is they're training you to believe. They're helping the mainstream media. They're helping the fucking system train people to believe in knowledge rather than accept facts on face value and make a determination on that fact and move the fuck on. I don't have any interest in doing any of that. Right? I mean, when I went to Grok and started talking about JFK's assassination, I don't have any preconceived beliefs in how he was killed, and who killed him. I don't even want to. I don't even care. I know John F. Kennedy was killed. I want to know why. That's what matters. But nobody wants to talk about why. They want to say the commies did it, the government did it. They don't want to get into the meat and potatoes of why the party of the KKK executed John Fitzgerald Kennedy. They don't want the public to know that. Because once you know that, because the facts bear that out, then you're going to view the actions of the Democratic Party for the last 70 years through the eyes of who they really are, the KKK. You don't understand what context does to people. In this particular instance, in the Koberger case, the context that they keep trying to sell the public is a bunch of fucking bullshit. The question that we need to, as viewers, should be asking ourselves is the evidence sufficient to prove beyond a reasonable doubt Brian Koberger committed these crimes? And then you have to define literally what is reasonable doubt. No, the truth in the JF Kennedy crime is consistent. His shooting, his brother's shooting, Martin Luther King's shooting, Malcolm X's shooting, those are all connected crimes. Those aren't crimes that were mafia driven. Those aren't crimes that were driven by the fucking communists. Look at history. John F. Kennedy was the darling of the Democratic Party, who in 1960 were KKK pieces of shit for the most part openly, but really working towards hiding that aspect of who they were. Look what they did after he was dead and the blacks started voting for him. They chased all of the fucking companies out of the fucking cities. They taxed and regulated all of these big industries out of the inner cities, causing them to turn into fucking shitholes of dependent government people, allowing in Taco Bells and fucking Rite Aid stores and Walmarts for your jobs. Back before these fucking Democrats took over these inner cities, folks, you could knock a girl up at 17 years old and go get a job with vacation and medical fucking and go buy a house. You could make something. Opportunity was there. They chased all the opportunity out of the inner city where the blacks are. They've been doing this forever. They're so fucking anti-black that they'd rather have 30 million fucking foreigners cross the border to fucking squash the black people even more. The understanding of John F. Kennedy's murder is a murder based on the KKK's hatred of black Americans explains the entire 70-year period. It explains why they're fighting against Trump's tariffs. It explains them to a T, and the most hateful group of son of a bitches ever to be in fucking power. That had nothing to do with why he was killed. That was one of the reasons the people that supported the war would participate in getting him killed, David. But that was not the reason. John F. Kennedy got the election because of the Democratic fucking Party. And the Democratic Party was suddenly found themselves to be in a fucking chaos with him when he decided to side with Martin Luther King. That happened a few months before he was assassinated. The direct connection between Kennedy and blacks is why he was murdered. There's no other fucking reason that makes more sense than that. And there's no other reason that would bring all of these parties, the CIA and others, the mafia, people within the government. Lyndon Johnson hated blacks. He said these niggers won't vote for a Republican for 100 years. It's the context to understand the whys, to understand the last 70 years of our politics, folks. The same thing in the Koberger case. You're not going to know why. You're limited at this point to the why. You're not going to know why. It may be right there in front of us, but the first thing you have to get through is to get through the reasonable doubt. Is what they showing us? Does it meet the bar of beyond a reasonable doubt? And any honest person, and most of us, just so you know, most Americans are honest. Even these people that are on the Democratic side. And there's a lot of Republicans on their side too. Wait till you see what comes out with these non-governmental organizations. I've been saying for years for the Republicans to take Catholic Charities and throw them out the fucking window. Catholic Charities was aiding and abetting and getting rich by fostering these illegal immigrants and getting them on the fucking American social programs and sapping the fucking money out of people like you and me. I got friends that are disabled. They get $1,100 a month. They get just enough money to be fucking broke. It's bad enough you're fucked up because of your disability. But to add insult to injury, you ain't got no fucking money to ride a bus. Fuck you. And then you're going to give these illegal immigrants all of this money? Go fuck yourself. I'd rather pay reparations to Black America than I would to support people coming in here illegally and then being given the right to fucking vote. No, I'm sorry. That criminality needs to fucking stop. And I honestly think that this time Trump is actually doing what he promised he would do the first time. And look, I don't agree with everything that guy does either. There's a bunch of shit about Trump I don't like. Why don't they spend any time on it? Because it's not really relevant. At least the direction of what he's trying to do and his accomplishment is what needs to be done. Who killed these 4 youths? I don't know. I don't know. We may never know. We just may never know. But there's obvious things that are happening. This particular guy, Mr. Roloff, maybe his name is Rolf. I don't know. I call him, his name is Roloff. So I call him Roloff. Okay? Mr. Roloff. The introduction of that new prosecutor. There's a message in all of this, folks. These things have a reason. This was Ashley Jennings. Now that someone posted her name, I want to thank you for that. Well, then you can get an open-minded perspective. I don't know, and look, I've seen a lot of people come in. Well, it's not even that. Look, folks, let me explain something to you. For those of you that don't understand tariffs, I find it incredible that anybody in today's day and age doesn't understand tariffs. I find it incredible that the definition and the use of tariffs have been redefined on some of these websites. When you Google it in, Google's going to bring you to the answer they want you to believe. And I don't want you to fucking believe me. I want you to hear the facts that I share and then make your own decision on them. And that's the end of that. I love when people disagree. If the facts that I present can be disagreed with, then disagree with them. Okay? 12, I don't know what they did, but I do know at this point, without a doubt, that Dylan Mortenson was communicating with her father. And what I also know without a doubt is that we're missing 2 hours and 53 minutes of text and phone activity from both of these young women. And what I also know is they're bringing this expert that I'm showing on the screen. And he's going to talk about specifics, Snapchat and other things like that these phones were engaged with. He's going to point out that Dylan was talking to her father. And my point is, it's likely that what he's going to point out is between 4:37 a.m. and 7:30 a.m., as well as prior to the crime. Who was Dylan talking to at 9 p.m. that night? What were her conversations? What videos and pictures and things did she take? Where are they? What were they about? That's what this gentleman is going to come in and address. And I suspect, folks, that what you're going to find is probably going to be like everything else. It's going to be condemning and then not be complete evidence. Because these people, she deleted this stuff. What up, William Tardy? No, the point of just showing that none of their information is factual based. There is nothing in fact to show that car belongs to Mr. Kohlberger. There's nothing in fact to place Mr. Kohlberger in the crime scene. You're relying on creating a narrative based on transfer DNA. The case was investigated backwards. All of these things are apparent. And the people that really needed more scrutiny are now finally getting the scrutiny. And yet there's still people out there resisting it. I don't know if what Bethany and Dylan did has anything at all to do with this crime. It could be just the trauma of being in the home. I find it highly unlikely. Very unlikely. I'll never forget Dylan in the background saying, Can I just tell you what happened at 4 a.m.? In a normal voice? Why was it so important for her to start building the fucking narrative? Why? Why wasn't, please hurry up, my roommates appear to be dead? Why wasn't that part of the phone call? These are simple observations that any human being should be making. And yet, The observation of this gentleman getting involved, Mr. Roloff, is something that really, really is stunning to find out that Dylan was talking to her dad. Now, look at once the crimes were committed, once people were aware, I understand. If that's what this time frame is, if this shows that her communication with her dad didn't take place until after the police arrived, okay. Right? So if that, but again, they're not disclosing that to us. They only showed us a group of text messages that go up until the police were called. This suggests that there's nothing in that group of text messages that would be unusual. Maybe there's a couple of pictures taken or something. Are they the pictures of the victim? I mean, we've said this from the very beginning, folks, that people in that generation are all about their phone. They got that phone so far up their ass that I think when they fucking, if they wink, they're taking a picture with their cell phone. So we've all, or at least a big portion of us that even had the smallest amount of courage to come out and ask questions about these survivors, have always seen different things, but yet they get buried. They don't get discussed. So there's as much room to say that what Dylan was doing is not nefarious with her phone. That this man, but then this man comes forward, and the things that he's going to discuss as an expert are like, wow. It's got nothing to do with people's opinions, William. It's got everything to do with reasonable doubt and what you could present to a court. And if these young girls knew what would have happened much earlier than we're led to believe, then yeah, that changes everybody's view if they're open to change. Most people believe in information, and they'll covet it and they'll protect it, and they'll only hang around those that agree with them, right? Well, I don't know that they're aware of that either. I don't think most of us are aware of that. You know who was aware of that? Let me tell you who definitely understood data, and that was Hillary Clinton, right? Hillary Clinton and introduced the world to BleachBit, a program of which I still maintain, and I'm not committing any crimes, right? They could still be victims, even regardless of, because we don't know what she was saying on the phone to her dad or what their conversations or images were. We don't. And I'm saying, William, that the importance of this witness, this expert, right? The importance of this. Dave says not Hillary. Right? The importance of this is that, yeah, I do have BleachBit, William. The importance of this is the missing 2 hours and 53 minutes. Why wasn't that disclosed to us? Why did their text messages stop at 4:37 a.m.? Why were the only pieces of communication they released between Bethany and Dylan? Why is that the only relevant piece of it? Now, it's relevant if that's the only communication they ever had. But according to this particular expert, and just adding 1 + 1 to make 2, just by doing that, you can see that this expert is going to show us a lot more detail and a lot more information about what they were doing with their phones that morning and that, or on the 13th, than is being shared with the public. And I don't want these young girls to suffer any indignity or any kind of chaos or even a microscopic dot of problems because it's being discussed here on my stream, right? Not that I think there's many people that really listen to this stream anyway. I mean, I might get 400 or 500 views or something on this. But again, you can't discount this gentleman's presence coming after the text messages were released, showing a 2 hour and 53-minute lapse. Not only that, it doesn't show us anything after 12 o'clock, if I remember right. Right? What phone usage? What was going on? What was going on between Dylan and Bethany and those people in the yard? What were their phones doing? Who were they talking to? There's just so many things that connect to somebody's presence like this. Thanks there, Jilly Bean. Yeah, and see, she's a cute blonde, so you got to put her up on the screen. That's Sergeant Friday's that kind of fucked up. Mostly the images I've seen out here today are the guys. I'm not putting your asses up there. Yeah, and so much of what we do every day, folks, your brainwashing is the context. People are selling you context, and that's not how things are supposed to work. You're supposed to be able to derive the context from the facts in front of you. And that's how it's supposed to work. Thanks, Jelly Bean. It's supposed to be an act. You accumulate the data available, and then you make an understanding of it. And then as time goes on, your understanding. Like for me, I applied this in politics and made a lot of enemies. Okay, and I apply this in true crime because I try to shy away from politics because it's just, I don't know. But in true crime, it seems as if there's people that believe he's guilty, and I find that actually gross. And then there's as many people that find him innocent, and I find that absolutely gross. Because there's no way for you or I to make that conclusion. There isn't information that's been provided by law enforcement to come to a conclusion of innocent or guilt. The information they have provided us doesn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt he is the person. But that still doesn't exclude him from being the person. That's the catch-22, folks. If there's no solid piece of evidence that's been shown to us that you can say, there you go. This fucking guy wasn't even there. Now, it may come from Cy Ray. We don't know. People are assuming it will. Okay. But until you know, you don't know, right? You can't know what you don't know. The same thing with this observation I'm making about Mr. Roloff and his presence being put forward now in this case. It's like, whoa, wow. It isn't really that complicated. It's not even logic and critical thought. It's just common sense. After all, what is common sense if not logic and critical thinking? That's why I'm so kind of hung up, and I'm trying to figure out a way to deliver this message about the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I don't need that guy that made that movie. What the fuck is that? Oliver Stone. I don't give a fuck what you got to say about who and how, Oliver Stone. It's not relevant. I'll tell you why it's not relevant. Because factually, an AI, which so many of you people are so fucking happy with, artificial intelligence. Okay. The most powerful AI on the planet not only agrees with me, but agrees with me completely that the why explains the who and how. Because the why takes the who, which is everyone and every theory that all of you people have, all of the dissimilar theories that you people have been given, that you people believe, the why puts them all in the same room, working together. That's the best thing about trying to understand the context and how it was hidden from you. You've been made to focus on the who and the how. But it's the why that takes every theory of who and how and combines all of those actors in the same group. They all had that motive. All of them. Therefore, they all could have been involved, and in fact, most likely were, because in order to create the circumstances and the opportunity to assassinate the president, all of them had to have some part in it. Even if it's supplying the bullets or the gun. You see? That's what makes understanding this is a assassination based on his connection to the Black Americans. His turning on his own party, the KKK, and supporting the blacks is the motive to kill him. That motive, then you extrapolate forward and you look at what the Democratic Party has done to Black America. I know I ain't fucking done nothing to hurt these folks. I've employed them. I've helped put some of them in business. Not because they're black, but because they're good friends to me. I don't give a fuck what color you are. And most of you look at the world the same way. These people that have been brainwashed to convince that the Democratic Party is the party of the people is insane. You got to have your head fucking screwed on backwards. That's the context. And everything that they do, you see through the context that's for the better good. Well, that's exactly how the KKK worked. That's exactly how Hitler worked. That's exactly how Stalin worked and Mao Zedong. And they sell you a context. And through that context, you see everything through that fucking glassy vision. And it justifies you going out and burning a fucking Tesla dealership, right? You're burning down the fucking guy that you praised for helping save the world. You're fucking keying people's cars and destroying people's vehicles of the same people that bought that car because they also believed they were saving the world. You're turning on your own fucking people. That's how fascist that party is. And that's how fucking insane the Democratic Party is. And that includes many Republicans that participate. As I said earlier, wait till you see the list of NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and the trillions of fucking dollars they stole from us to use against us, to subjugate us. Wait till you see all this come out. Pay attention to that stuff, folks. I'm not going to be too much in the stream, but when it comes to this one, the title is, Hey, Dylan Mortenson, what is your role in the Idaho 4? What is her fucking role? Why are we only finding out now she was in communication with her father? And why is she using all these different methods of communication with her father? Why is she deleting videos and pictures? Why is she using Snapchat and other fucking programs that are not supposed to be traceable? What is going on? Why is this man all of a sudden, Mr. Roloff, going to come forward and discuss all of this stuff? Because there's something to it, folks. Yeah, and here's the problem, 12. It's because they believe. That's the problem. Americans, you've been stripped of your ability to think. You think that it's a dynamic answer, either right or left, and it's just so fucking not true. The answer's always in the middle. And to be very honest with you, I would guarantee that 99.9% of the people that come into this show live their life in the middle. Their views are middle of the road. That's a successful life. You give everybody the respect that they're human beings, right? And that's it. Secrecy, that's the problem. This case should have been open from the very beginning. 100%, Bill. 100 billion trillion quadruple fucking 5.637 quadrillion fucking percent. Right? But it isn't just George Soros. It's the billionaires on the Republican side that are a part of that too. Yeah, they're all on the record telling us these kids were asleep. No, there's 100% truth that she's part of this. She admits and she tells us she was there before, during, and after. That makes her part of this open mind. I mean, your whole idea is you got an open mind. Well, you can't say she's not a part of this if she herself places her in that home before, during, and after. That makes her a part of it. Sorry. It's that simple. Well, it's not even just that the messages, you have to have a conscious reason. I don't know, folks. Can you imagine being in a terrible car accident with your kids in the car? I'll use Marion as an example. Marion looks kind of okay too. Yeah, she certainly does. But can you imagine this, Marion, that you're in an accident and God forbid it's a car accident and you and your kids or your sisters or whatever are in this vehicle and you start texting your parents or your husband or your significant other? Would you be deleting them fucking messages? Would you be deleting those messages after you send them? Let's say nobody was hurt, because I don't want anybody to be hurt in this example. But would you delete those messages? Would you take pictures and then delete them? Was that what you would do, Marion? In just an everyday event, a horrific event, a car accident. What if you survived a plane crash? What if you were in a store and a shooter came through? Would you fucking delete these conversations? Would you delete these pictures? And the answer to that question is, of course not. So why is Dylan deleting all of this shit? Why is she talking to her dad? What time did she talk to her dad? Who else did she talk to between 4:37 a.m. and 7:30 a.m.? Maybe she was sleeping between 4:37 a.m. and 7:30. Maybe she did get a 2-hour and 53-minute cat nap. That's possible. But everything else they've said about this situation is a lie. You're right. Who pointed that out? That they were, here, I'll post a dude. Fry and May, but both are on record of making the statements that they were asleep, right? That's right. That's right. That's the catch-22. And they've why would you hide this data from you? Open-minded perspectives. Are you being called as a witness? That's what I don't know what you mean there, Coco. Welcome, Coco. I don't know if I've seen you in here before. Are you being called open-minded? Oh, yeah. If he's being called as a witness, that's fantastic. I see her question was directed at the chat. Sorry, Coco. I think the moral of the story is I don't text or call if you are tangentially involved with a crime. Well, that's not true. That's a very unusual statement to make. Oh no, I'm sorry. I read it wrong. William. Got to get rid of you. I'll put Coco up there. You're right. The moral of the story is don't text or call if you're tangentially involved with a crime. I wonder if they really, through defense, would have. They did search this. They did search this stuff. That's why this witness is being called forward. Are we putting out what I can before I gotta go? Are we putting out what I can? I don't know what you mean there, open mind. Listen, I think it's we all had an issue with the 8-hour delay, right? Yeah, they're asking if you've been subpoenaed. I'm an unusual person, Karen. I delete all of my text messages except from 3 different people. No, 4. Dumpster company, wholesaler, foreman. I think that's it. Maybe it's only 3. I literally delete all of my text messages all the time. I hate having I got 1, 2, 3 people, not 4. I must be a lonely guy. But I delete all of my text messages when the conversation's over. So I'm unusual in that, but I do that for expedience. Right? Well, it's not even that. She's obviously had some conversations. Her father's now being dragged into this. It may be completely innocent. But I'm sorry, you're talking about why is it? Here's another problem that I have with a lot of people that refuse to think. We have the backdrop of Brian Kohlberger's transfer DNA allegedly on a button snap of a knife sheath. So every piece of information that you view is through the backdrop of that, which then gives you the context that he was there. That's the context under which you've been taught to view this case. Not all of you, but that's what they've pushed. That's what they're trying to get us to see. They're trying to force it down our throat. The backdrop is, even if these pictures aren't clear, that is a Elantra. Okay? Even if all we're pointing out is headlights, that's consistent with that Elantra's travel of direction. Direction of travel, right? Everything is based on their admittance of DNA at the crime scene. You understand? Yet when we look at the 2 young girls, Bethany and Dylan, we don't put the crime scene backdrop in your observation. Your observation of what you're seeing isn't, well, they're part of a quadruple homicide. They're part of a quadruple, even look at, even more so than Brian. This is not circumstantial. The fact that they were present, they're telling us they were. There's no argument against that. That goes beyond a reasonable doubt. Was Dylan present at the crime scene? Beyond a reasonable doubt, you can comfortably state yes. And you wouldn't be making a mistake. Is that Brian's car in the picture? You can't say that. You don't know. Nobody does. That's reasonable doubt, you see? But nobody wants to look at the 2 young women in the backdrop of 4 horrific homicides that took place in the home that they were in. And that's how you have to view that. if you're going to fairly view Brian that way, then here's what I'm saying. You're a hypocrite. You're an ignorant motherfucker. If you're going to accept transfer DNA on a knife sheath as your backdrop to view Brian Kohlberger, how the fuck can't you use that same backdrop when looking at the two young women? You got to be ignorant, bro. In other words, you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. And that's just, again, that's because the context of Brian as the doer is established because you accept DNA proves he did it. So anything they put forward now, they're accomplishing their task of getting you because you bought into their context. Whereas a lot of people will not buy into that context, but they take the other extreme position. The other extreme position is he's innocent. And there's nothing here to show either innocence or guilt. That's the truth. How about the crash the line? Yeah, that, again, no, I don't have any thoughts about that. That's not, look at, they've told us that it doesn't have anything to do with the crime. And I have to accept that because there's nothing that's come forward to suggest it has. Now, maybe the case the defense brings up will include that. But until that happens, I won't even give that car a second thought. Yeah, I know. I agree with you there. Delby. Read what I wrote. What did Norma write? They messed up when they said we saw last night, not what Dylan saw. I'm not. Yeah, put that in the context if you can. Yeah, that's one question. Now Dylan is telling us she saw the guy look right at her. She made eye contact with the guy, but she can't tell us what color eyes he has. And Kohlbergers are blue, right? I asked if you were at the crime. You gave me an answer about other stuff. I'm trying to understand. She's asking questions that she'd like a yes or no answer to, basically, open mind. Yeah, I mean, do we know what kind of car the DoorDash driver has? Do we know what kind of vehicle the delivery guy has? Those would be important pieces of information. And look, they may be orange fucking Camaros. They could be a red Chevy van. They could be a whole bunch of things, folks. I don't know what these people drive, but I think it's fair to say we should be aware of that, right? Because that let me just say, folks, God forbid the DoorDash driver drives a white sedan. Yeah, I agree with that. See, that's what I mean. Norma's looking for, and she's digging into the words that people say. Yeah, I'm not saying that. I agree with that, Christina. But thinking means that, listen, thinking means accepting when you're wrong too. It absolutely, you have to accept when you're wrong. I mean, that's the process of thinking. Somebody's saying a Pinto wagon in reference to what? What car the DoorDash driver had? I don't know how they could have a Pinto wagon, but it could have been a Pinto wagon. I mean, as unlikely as that is, yeah, sure. It could have been a monster truck, right? It could have been anything. I don't know what Tracy is saying there. She's shaking. Yeah, and so where did Coco go? Coco was asking some good questions. I don't know what happened to open-minded perspective. To the mail. I was saying making to the mail a little bit back. I don't know what mail you're talking about. Yeah, I don't know. I guess what Coco is trying to hear. Yeah, and that's that the PCA. I said this in the beginning, and I stand on my ground. A probable cause affidavit is supposed to show a high likelihood that you're the perpetrator, not an inference or a suggestion. A probable cause affidavit, or what we call in my town, in my city, in my state, um, I can't remember what they call it now. Isn't that something how your mind works? Um, Dylan Mortenson and Bethany Funk claim to have been in the middle of the crime scene. Why not believe them? That's right. Unless evidence comes out to contravene it, you have to accept that as being the fact that you have to work with. And your narrative has to be built around that state. Norma's absolutely right. And who said that? Yeah, let me see here. I think one of the girls on the call was a neighbor, and she didn't. Yeah, one of the girls was a neighbor. Norma's right. Yeah, did she say we saw a man here? Literally, yeah. Thank you there, Heather. It's literally be a statement of facts. And here's where I was going to go with it. It can include hearsay evidence. Hearsay evidence would be somebody that's witnessed it, even from a distance, saying that you got into a white sedan and that you had dark hair. Someone else saying, yeah, I saw a guy pulling off his mask. He got in a white sedan, and this is what I remember the license plate. It was a Pennsylvania plate. It wasn't Washington. Something like that, which is establishing a fact that connects to the perpetrator that you're accusing, and it becomes a fact, even though it was given to you through hearsay, because witness testimony is, in many cases, considered hearsay. Okay? Unless their information connects to a direct fact that would show your involvement. But so a probable cause affidavit, folks, and it bothers me that I can't remember what they call it here in New York. And you see how quickly the prosecution said they're going to ignore the PCA. It doesn't matter. The PCA, I guess if you want to argue the validity of it, it's an interpretation of the data they collected. But they can't be witnesses. Do you understand? A policeman can't interpret your words to mean something other than what they are. And if they're going to do that, like they did through the whole PCA, that's making the cop a witness. Girl next door, what up? The cop doesn't know that he turned that phone off when they wrote that affidavit. They have no way to know that. Right? Yeah. So take a second here, open-minded perspective. Tracy, that's the first time I've seen you because you're written in caps. You might want to try that again. In caps. Tracy said what? Up here. Hang on. I'll try to find you there, Trace. It's not as easy to go back as people think, because it doesn't move in the way that you would hope it would move, like one person at a time. It just, the whole fucking thing moves on you. Is anyone listening to me? Yeah, we try to listen. Hang on. I'm going to go back and see what you said. See, you can't use the up click. That's the problem. Tippy David Beckles. I think you're being subpoenaed. You shouldn't be on YouTube, according to her. If Dylan was in her room, where was her phone charger, and claimed her phone was going dead, but she was in her own room? Yeah, that's an excellent point. Fuck, my battery's going to die. How come you're not plugged into the wall charger? Right? I agree with Coco. She's just asking you if you're being subpoenaed under what context are you being subpoenaed? Are you a direct witness? Are you not a direct witness? What? I don't know. Were you there the next day or the next morning? Were you connected to these people personally? That's all. You don't have to be specific, but under what context are you going to be subpoenaed? Sorry, you all have to see what Bubbly Waters just put out. It's a major, oh my God. No, I won't listen to Bubbly Waters. I wouldn't let Bubbly Waters lick my ass. She's like Tommy Jude, that fucking broad. I have no interest in Bubbly Waters. If that offends anybody, then block me and go hang out with Bubbly. I don't give a fuck. That fucking broad with her pictures and her sounds and her fucking fuck that nonsense. Who's got time to fucking play that fucking gotcha fucking game? Yeah, I just have no interest. People like Tommy Jude and others, they got all these fucking theories. I have no interest in it. I don't give a fuck what Bubbly says. Bubbly could yell, "Look out," while I'm crossing the street and a bus is going to hit me, and I'd keep fucking walking. No, I don't want to watch anything. Just tell us, what is she saying? That's the most I'll allow in here, there, Trace. What is she saying? But look at a probable cause affidavit. Now it's not important, but the probable cause affidavit is completely being ignored now. Doesn't matter, of course. But that's what you used to charge a guy with 4 homicides, but now it don't matter. It certainly fucking mattered when you used it, didn't it? And that again goes to show corrupt police and police departments and prosecutors are those that consider themselves judge, jury, and executioner. These questions that people have on some of the data they've given are the questions a judge should have asked. A judge should have asked, okay, can you show me how all these cars and these different images are actually the same car? Well, I'm not going over to Bubbly Waters' show. I'm sorry. I'm just not doing it. I don't think, look, like I just said, if that woman yelled, "Stop," and I was going to step out in front of a bus, I wouldn't give her enough credit to stop. I'd just keep walking. And if I got hit by a bus, I'd take the hit. There's many people out here on YouTube I feel the same way about. I don't want to hear theories, and I don't want all this nonsense. What is Bubbly Waters saying? I don't know why you can't put that out here rather than the big camps that we got to go watch her. Why are you coming in here telling people to go to someone else's stream? I mean, what the fuck? Just state what she said. It's not that difficult, Tracy. Yeah, I don't understand, and I really don't care. If it's that important, then just make the statement. And, you know, and then if people all want a 97, you want to jump out and go watch Bubbly Waters, you go right ahead. I don't give a fuck. Girl next door. They don't make sense to even the people that spoke them, right? I mean, it's Coola's roommate, Jordan Baker, a video of him. I don't even know who them people are. It's Kopaka's roommate. Oh, well. You know, it's funny. Kopaka's case has a lot of similarities to this case. The most glaring connection between Kopaka and Brian Koberger is the way these fucking law enforcement swatted him. Kopaka's ended up in his death. Koberger, fortunately, was too aloof to understand. These people putting his mother and father in fucking... He just froze, right? Truth, Justice, and Crime with Anna D. Anna D. Yeah, I don't... You know, I don't... So he made a video. What is his topic of his video? What is the video saying? You know, that's... What's the point? I don't want to go see these people outrageous bullshit they're doing for clicks. Fuck Bubbly Waters. Good. If your dick can stay hard, I say have at her, right? Well, so he made a video. Good for him. He'll get 10,000 views. Good for him. I mean, the Kopaka, to me, the idea that Kopaka, the idea that there's absolutely no connection to this case seems a little strange to me. It's possible, of course. And since we have no information about that at all, really, we've got some bullshit. Yeah, so the guy that called 911, it is what it is. The police officer, the policewoman's testimony, and her not even her testimony. The write-up that the police officer made, that woman, is pretty telling, right? Yeah, no, I agree. I also think the major connection between Kopaka and Brian Koberger is the manner in which police were dispatched to deal with them. I think it's egregious that they sent the SWAT team into Koberger's property. Now, not egregious at all. If you just got his name and you had a solid piece of evidence to act upon, not egregious at all. But the fact that you had cameras you placed in his parents' yard on Christmas Day, that you had him under surveillance, that you knew his comings and goings, that these things were obvious to you, that he jogged. Those pieces of information tell me you didn't need to SWAT the guy. You didn't need to bring in Black Hawk helicopters and fucking, the 101 airborne. I mean, come on. To arrest Brian Kohlberger? You could have arrested him on fucking 50 different ways. More importantly, you could have just knocked on the door. And when they opened it, just made yourself in. Warrant, everybody down, and just ran through the house. You could have done that too. No, they couldn't do that. They had to have snipers and fucking an assault team. And what evidence did they have to show that this guy was that kind of a threat? The idea that you got evidence connecting him to a crime, why didn't they do that with the Gilgo killer in Rhode Island that killed all them women? Why did they follow him? And when he put a pizza box down, they collected a pizza box. Then they went and arrested the guy. No, I haven't watched it. I'm not going to watch it there. Yeah. But that's the simplest way to get rid of a suspect is that if Kohlberger would have resisted, or that family would have reacted in any way that was counter to the safety of those officers, they'd be dead. Let's be clear. There was nothing happening that would justify a no-knock warrant. Look, you can just, it gets ignored. But to me, the coincidence is just too strong between Kopacka and Kohlberger and how they were apprehended, or at least the attempt of apprehension when it comes to the Kopacka case. What did this kid do? He was in there with a gun. All right. That's what you're saying, I guess. I don't know. Maybe in that situation it was warranted. But in the Kohlberger, I don't know. Yeah, the Gilgo, the dude is huge. I'm sorry, but I feel this is huge. Well, Tracy, what's so important about what this guy's video says? Is he telling us something that nobody's heard before? Is he telling us something that's important? What is he saying? What is there has to be a context to what makes you think that way. Exactly, Marion. And if the Kohlberger family would have reacted in any way that they felt threatened, they would have shot and killed them people. That's the terrifying thing about these kind of warrants where you got snipers and SWAT. Holy fuck. Hey, but he got through it. I mean, how about the conversation he had with the cop? Ask him about his education. After this is all sorted out, maybe we can have a sit down for coffee. Can you imagine? That's how much Brian Kohlberger didn't know what was going on. And you can't make that shit up. Yeah, Bubbly Waters, you're not welcome here. You're not welcome here. Don't pretend you're welcome here. I'm not going to block you at this point, but just so you know, stay the fuck out of my stream. People like you, I avoid like a fucking plague, and nothing about that will change. Okay? Fucking pixelated, fucking crazy fucking stories and ideas and theory. Get the fuck out of here with that. Anyway, back to where we were. Yeah, that is kind of insane. I agree with you, Christine. I don't. Well, somebody and listen, somebody with a firearm inside of an apartment complex of college students. Yeah, you got to take serious fucking action against that, right? So it is what it is. But with all arrests, there's got to be a determining factor. It escalated to that, from what I understand, with Mr. Kopacka. And it escalated to the situation that had become. I don't know the circumstances and the particulars of it all, but I do think that the way that was dealt with and the way Kohlberger was dealt with, it's a coincidence most likely, but it's an awful weird coincidence. And in one of these cases, it ended up with the death of Mr. Kopacka. Right? I mean, we don't really know that much. That's been sealed. Finally, they're starting to release info on it, and I don't think every cop in the force is corrupt. I don't think all police or all prosecutors are corrupt. I don't think that at all. Furthest thing from the truth when it comes to my view. I view individuals and situations based on individual actions, and I don't suspect all police. Like I've given that example of Florida police that were told of a dead body in a garage, and this woman had been bludgeoned to death by her ex-husband. But the only evidence they had was a neighbor that had taken a picture of a pickup truck in that driveway that night, and the only reason the neighbor took a picture was because she heard a terrifying scream, and she didn't know where it came from, but she thought that was unusual, and she took a picture of the ex-husband's truck, who at that point in time was in the house and had just killed his ex-wife. He was in the garage, right? Well, the Florida police didn't immediately arrest the ex-husband. They went and got a subpoena for his truck because they had a picture of that truck running in the driveway with its license plate. So they knew the truck was there. They didn't know who drove it there. In other words, the truck, this is what I mean, folks, by circumstantial evidence. The truck isn't conclusive evidence the husband committed the murder that was found in the garage. And so they subpoenaed the truck. And they did a forensic investigation of the truck, and they found the blood of the victim inside that truck. And then and only then did they arrest the ex-husband for the murder of his ex-wife. You see, there's a process that the government and that the police agencies, there's a process they must follow, because we've got a constitution that places limits on their activity. And none of those limits seem to apply to a lot of police agencies and policemen. Look what the Karen Reed case. Look what's going on in that case. Look what's going on with the Delphi case. Look what's going on with the Koberger case. You know, so yeah, Beckles needs a shower. Yeah, you might want to douse yourself in bleach first, Beckles, and and then take your shower. Yeah, I agree with you there, Christine, on that statement. But back to this Dylan Mortenson. Why are we finding out all of this stuff 2.5 years after the crime? I think Hitler's another one of those judges that thinks he's a god. Listen, the best judge I ever had in the world. The best judge I ever had in the world. I was going through a divorce, and my ex-wife, she went down to the police and said, we were still living under the same roof. And she went down to the police and she said to the police, now I've done, and look, I would hand over every penny I own, every fucking penny and every fucking object I own, if somebody could show this to be a lie. And here's the statement. I never laid a fucking finger on her ever and never threatened her life ever. I don't deal with women that way. I walk away. That's it. You don't want me around you, then I leave. I don't argue about it. It's just stupid. Okay? She went down to the court of law and she said that she's a fear of her life and that she's afraid I'll get a gun and come and shoot her. And on that statement, they gave her an order of fucking protection. She didn't say I threatened her. She didn't say I told her. She didn't say blah, blah, blah. Let me be clear. I'm a convicted felon for robbing a bank. Okay? I can't own a fucking firearm. And that applied to that period of my life when I was married. It happened prior to my marriage. So the whole statement that she's afraid I'd go get a gun wasn't even fucking possible. All right? They put an order of protection and kicked me out of my house like a fucking unpaid tenant. And then I had to go to court and fight it. I went to 3 prosecuting attorneys that wanted as little as $350 an hour and as much as $600 an hour. And all 3 of those attorneys told me you should plead guilty to a lesser charge. And I told them, fuck you. What she's alleging is unlawful. And what she's alleging is not only unlawful, but it hinders my ability to be a free man. So I didn't hire an attorney. I go to court for the divorce issue. Okay? Unbeknownst to me, at the end of that court hearing, she goes back to get me violated on the order of protection. And her statement to the court was, He was in court, and I was scared for my life because of the way he was looking at me and talking to his lawyer. And then motherfuckers arrested me for that and put me in jail. Well, I fought that. And I went in front of a judge that was new, young guy, youngest judge I'd ever seen in my life. And he told the prosecution to produce their evidence to show me in violation of the order of protection. And they couldn't. He said, well, you got to come back in 3 weeks and bring case law. Came back in 3 weeks. They couldn't show case law. And this is why they couldn't show case law. Me talking to my lawyer and you overhearing it, okay, is your fucking problem. Me being in a room to which you fucking demanded my presence through the order of a divorce filing couldn't violate an order of protection. In New York, they're called stay-away orders. And the New York Supreme Court has ruled on this issue. I came to these rulings by going to a law library and reading fucking books, folks. How many of you read a book lately? Okay? My argument in court was, Your Honor, a stay-away order can only be in violation if you can show my intentional presence in that person that ordered that's got the protection. I did not willingly go to that courtroom. And the statements I made to my lawyer are protected. And if you overheard them, too fucking bad. No matter what I said, wasn't directed to the persons on the order of protection. Therefore, this is an unjustified filing of a violation, an unjustified prosecution, and this charge needs to be dismissed. This judge, you never see a judge smile like this in your life. Usually when they smile, you're fucked. But he was holding back a laugh. He said, okay, Mr. My last name. And then he says, he gives him another 2 weeks to come back. So I've been to court originally. I've been to court on a postponement for 3 weeks. Now I got to go back again on 2 weeks. Meanwhile, this shit's hanging over my head. We go back to court the third fucking time, and the judge says to the prosecutor, now here's what they did. They changed the prosecutors. So now one of the other assistant district attorneys, not the first one that I met with, that was there twice, that person bailed. Now there's a new one on there, and now they postpone it again for the new one to get up to speed on this charge. So now I got to come back a fourth time. And on the fourth time I come back, there's a new prosecutor again, and I just lost my mind. I said, Your Honor, there's no case law in the history of the state ever that can interpret what this woman described in that order for these people to violate it and arrest me. There's no fucking where in the world that you could say I did that. He's laughing. He goes, calm down. And he asked he said, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, sir, that you have to handle this case to the end. No more change in district attorneys. And you have one try to get it right. And we're coming back on Monday. This is like a Thursday. He says, is that all right with you, mister? I'm like, yeah. I came back on Monday and the fucking DA had nothing. And the court said, this case is dismissed. And as he picked up his hammer, I said, wait a minute. He goes, yes. I said, will you please dismiss this with prejudice? And he laughed again and he banged the hammer. He says, no, I won't do that. He goes, enough is enough. He said, I'll dismiss the case. You're free to go. He said, however, I would like to say that you, sir, should practice law. Be careful out there. Have a good day. And out I went. The facts, folks, facts are facts are facts. Those have to be observed. They have to be accepted up until the point in time where they change, right? Whatever happened to open-minded perspectives? He vanished. Hitler could have rejected his cases. So could Judge John Judge. In a way, folks, I really, really think that Judge John Judge should have continued on with this case. I really think that he should have continued on with this case and seen it to the end. You know, I don't think a second judge should have been involved because there were things that were said by Judge Judge, and this is why Bill Thompson isn't, in my opinion, why he's not trying to prosecute the case. Why he put this woman out front, whatever her name is, right? And now why she's stepping back and another lawyer's coming in. And I think that the reason for that is these people have made egregious errors that look to be obvious. And by stepping back, they're trying to keep that from becoming the issue in the courtroom. That's what I think you're seeing. That's why I think another attorney is going to come in for the trial. It's because Hitler and whoever this other girl is, I keep forgetting her name. Somebody told me earlier. Thank you for telling me, but I'm terrible with names. Hitler, you can't forget, right? And I suspect that the whole point of moving attorneys and playing hot potato, yeah, Ashley Jennings, thank you, is because these lawyers are fucked up. I don't know. I think if we still had Judge, no, I don't think so. I think this case would have been adjudicated by now. Judge came out and got the state to agree that the identification of Brian Koberger had nothing to do with the IGG report. He said that in open court twice. He said that's why he wasn't. This is why he wasn't agreeing with the disclosure that Ann was demanding. The disclosure for the IGG was irrelevant because the prosecution says that they did not use that to identify Brian Koberger as the suspect. Just be aware. And he got Bill Thompson to say that out of his own fucking mouth in the courtroom. So Judge, had he maintained this case, I don't think this case would even be going anymore. Oh, he's just there for the jury questions? That's interesting. I know they just said they did use IGG, but go back to the court hearings where Bill Thompson says they didn't. Then he disappeared. Now Ashley Jennings is in the lead. No, but being slow, I wouldn't have the reason why he did that. Just be aware. I agree that sounds like insanity, but he knew he was having trouble with the prosecution giving up their fucking discovery. I don't know. I kind of like the steady Eddie kind of guy he was. Here's another reason why I liked him. Ann Taylor was making the point that searching databases that are prohibited is a violation of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. It's in those databases that they came to Brian Koberger's name. Judge Hippler didn't understand that point, and he said, are you trying to tell me, Miss Taylor, that DNA found at a crime scene is protected by the Fourth Amendment by the person it belongs to? That statement from Judge Hippler, in fact, then reinforced when the prosecution came up and said, Your Honor, exactly. How can evidence found at a crime scene be protected by somebody's Fourth Amendment right? Because Hippler took that view, I lost faith in him as a judge. He's not listening. Okay? He's not listening. Clearly, Judge listened. And even if he got something wrong, he sought to correct it. This gentleman, he's one of those judge, jury, executioner guys from what I've viewed so far. And I could, again, there's always room to be wrong. Maybe he is the most fair, level-handed guy. But the other thing that kind of bothers me with many judges, and I didn't get this sense from Judge, is many judges forget that their only purpose in life is to prevent government overreach. Period. Preventing government overreach, meaning that the guardrails of the Constitution aren't rights that you were given. The Constitution are guardrails to prevent the fucking government from coming across that line. That guardrail is a stop, and a judge is supposed to regulate that fucking guardrail. And that's for both sides, right? There's legal precedent. There's constitutional limits. And you, the prosecution, can't cross them. And that's the main job. And the other job, obviously, is you can't make some crazy unbased fucking statements or bring evidence in that's got nothing to do with nothing. So he does regulate the defense as well. But the regulation is all based on the rule of law as outlined in the Constitution. And that's kind of why I like Judge to some extent. I mean, that's why he held the prosecutor to that statement. It's been stated clearly by the prosecution, the IGG is not how they identified Brian Koberger as a suspect. Isn't that right, Mr. Thompson? And he stood up, yes, Your Honor, we did not. So I think if Judge was still there, this may not be where it's at right now. Yeah, Hippler could say it didn't violate, but Brian Koberger being a part of those tens of thousands of other people is Brian Koberger. You see? You can't have that both ways. It's kind of like an oxymoron, in all fairness, right? Yeah, so if he's only there to question witnesses, then okay. But I'm not sure that means he won't have more of a hand in it. But if that's all his presence here is, fine. But I think this young girl, Jennings, Ashley Jennings. Yeah, I think Judge, and look at the reason why discovery was just held back by him and it was kept sealed was because, according to the state, that wasn't relevant to the identification of Brian Kohlberger as a suspect. But the state played fuck with that because they originally identified Kohlberger from the mention of him from Washington State University police that he owned an Elantra. See, that's what the state was trying to default to. And the argument, no, we didn't come to him as a suspect. We had his name earlier. But the name was given to them earlier, and then that jerk-off Payne testified on the stand that Brian Kohlberger was discounted. Early on, he was discounted. So then when did you become aware of him as a suspect? Only through the IGG work. You see? That would have to be fought out in Judge's court. The Mike Nifong treatment. I don't know what that is. Yeah, Corporal Payne did a very bad job. But in fact, he did tell the truth, in fairness to Corporal Payne. Some of the questions that were asked and he answered was the truth. And that's what I said. I think the feds have been more involved in this case than people want to realize. And I think they found a very complacent fucking police department to be able to do that. The behind-the-scene puppet master, for whatever reason. I don't know. I just don't know. And I said this before, and I think someone got mad and blocked me. Othram Lab didn't have access to those other databases that the FBI had used. And therefore, Othram Lab wouldn't have come to the conclusion of Brian Kohlberger. Okay? Their conclusion was 4 brothers, a low count, but nonetheless 4 brothers, of which Brent Kopacka was one of those 4 brothers. And I don't know the date of the day he was killed, but I do believe that Brent Kopacka was one of 4 brothers. In other words, he had 3 other brothers. That's my understanding of Mr. Kopacka. And that's why I'm curious, was that brother connected to him? I don't know if they identified these brothers. They may have, which would make what I just said bunk. But it was a thought, right? Mike Nafong was the prosecutor in the Duke Lacrosse case. He was disbarred, and many have feared criminal force. Yeah. They should be disbarred when they're crossing lines. They shouldn't be crossing. Look, I don't have any objection to you searching 23andMe, but as 23andMe's user agreement, this is the argument Ann should have made. Their user agreement to the client is that the law enforcement does not have access to our database without a warrant. So for these people to say that they didn't break a law, they're not lying. But these databases did tell the promise. They did give the promise to the user that their data was private, not to be shared with law enforcement without proper warrant. And because they didn't have a warrant, that should be excluded from this case. That's the argument I would have made. Because it's not a matter of just violating a user database. It's that the database specifically promised the users a protection. A constitutional protection was part of their user agreement. Therefore, anybody that joined that website enjoyed the same confidence of fucking protections that they have in their own home. That was what was conveyed to them by the site they joined. Therefore, if you have privacy and protections from an unlawful search and seizures and entry into your private property, then that would also extend to any website that makes the statement that 23andMe made. That's the argument she should have presented to the court. Therefore, because no other database indicated Brian Kohlberger, and it was only the databases which stated that none of this would be shared with the police, then that data should be thrown out. That's the argument that should have been made. And to me, look at, I don't know. We all spend time in our own heads, but I don't think the argument that I just laid out is an argument that could be overcome. I just don't think, I don't see how the government can overcome that. These people used the site with that protection, promised them. If the site violated their privacy and started selling your stuff to China telling you that your stuff wouldn't be shared with anybody outside of this database, including law enforcement, then if they started doing that, that site could be civilly sued, right? Would it be criminal? It may not be criminal. It would be civil. So is the FBI saying to the American people, we can have civil we can break laws or break user agreements. It's a civil case. Sue me. Go ahead, sue me. It's kind of what they're saying. But what I'm saying is the courts, in a situation where your privacy is protected from government and law enforcement access, that's the equivalent of the constitutional preventing them from just kicking in doors. They just can't go into your house and start searching for fucking drugs or illegal things, okay? No different than they should be able to get into a database that's promised you that protection. The whole case was corrupted. Judge Gold was criminal. They wouldn't use IgG because they considered it to be junk science. Well, there really wasn't much to use IgG on. But the IgG, unfortunately, in this case, may be junk as well. If the button snap on that sheath is brass, then they got a lot of splaining to do here, Lucy. Because DNA cannot, and let's make no misunderstanding, DNA cannot exist on brass. It's like kryptonite to Superman. That's how fucking damning brass is to DNA, folks. It destroys it. The one guy that comes in here, Thomas something, he's pretty fucking smart. He knows the exact term. But believe me when I tell you, brass is kryptonite to DNA. And it becomes completely unusable after 4 hours. But from the instant it comes in contact with brass, the degradation process of that DNA starts immediately. Immediately. And the fact of the matter was that crime wasn't reported for 8 hours. Crime scene investigation didn't start for another 4 hours. The transport and actual lab work may have taken a day or two. And anything you found on brass would be unviable. And to argue that it wasn't is a fool's fucking errand. Okay? It is a fool's errand. It does more than degrade. It gets destroyed. It gets destroyed. It's like adding chlorine to a pool to kill bacteria. It destroys it. I mentioned this before. That's why don't live in a house without copper pipes. Bacteria will not. Mr. Tardy, that's who it is. Will not survive in copper. Why do you think they paint the bottom of ships with a copper paint? Okay, it's when that paint wears off, when that in fact those barnacles will start sticking to that ship and start sticking to each other. Okay, but bottoms of boats are painted in copper to prevent. Just understand that, and that's how you have to view brass when it comes in contact with DNA. That's why they don't ever do and swab bullet cartridges. That's the only catch-22. And let me just say, be real, the only other option for that snap is stainless steel. Stainless steel will allow DNA to survive. So it's either a stainless steel button snap or it's brass. It's one or the other. That's how it works, folks. Yeah, that was brand new info when I found it online with Dago. But I want to say, I only found it because some girl, she used to try to dress up like that jerk off TikTok or Drip Drop or whatever the fuck his name is. She had mentioned that in her training within whatever she was doing, the army, whatever she did, that it was a known scientific fact that DNA would not survive on brass. She didn't connect it to the knife sheath as I did. But it was her statement that made me look into it, and she was absolutely right. And so that's when I went on Daggles and made that point. And it really pissed off, Get a Clue! Get him! Who seems to be a left-wing fucking maniac from what I can tell. And it just looks filthy on you, Get a Clue. Or Murphy's fucking whatever, barking, whatever. Murphy knows all. To be a lefty like that, you are one sick fuck, and you need therapy, bro. Stainless does have a time limit, aluminum, but they're all extremely long. The leather itself doesn't have a time limit. Some surfaces, it'll stay there. If it's undisturbed, it'll stay there forever, depending on the surface. Just be aware, right? So you're right. There are time limits for a lot of different materials, but the worst material that they know for sure destroys DNA is brass. Murphy's clue went nuts. Yeah. I think he switched over to a gilter, right? Now I think he's out there screaming Brian Kohlberger did it. Yeah. Well, he switched his narrative. He did a 180. Copper is bad, but brass is really bad. Brass is the top notch. And because we're dealing with a knife sheath, it's either stainless or brass. That's why I focus on the brass. And yeah, he's I liked his work on. Here's the thing that bothers me with him, right? Yeah, exactly. That's what I think that's part of her argument too. The disagreement I have with him is none of the information they've given us places Brian at that home. Again, even if that is an 11 to 16 or 11 to 17, 18, I don't give a fuck what year it is that none of that identifies it to be Brian Kohlberger's car. You still have to agree with that assumption the police are making. And when you're going to convict somebody, an assumption isn't a fair way to convict them. The standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. And there is no images that have been released. And I would argue that the one image, and he showed the page of that PDF or whatever the hell it is, that shows the car leaving. I'm sorry, but that looks like a black car to me. I don't care about where the third light is or isn't. I don't care about your circle jerks on different things than that. The bottom line is I do not see a white Elantra leaving the crime scene at 4:20 a.m. That vehicle, as described, doesn't fit the image of the car you say went down that way. And so his work on what went around that building, this is the other thing. He knows the car that went around that building was not a Hyundai Elantra. Of all people, that fucking moron knows it. Yet now the police come out, oh, well, he had a mask. Oh, well, he had a knife. Well, that shouldn't surprise anybody. I don't find that to be conclusive evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. But when you add it all up, no, when you add it all up beyond the backdrop of transfer DNA, take out the transfer DNA, and what do you got? You still have circumstantial evidence that does not conclusively place Brian Kohlberger or his vehicle at that home, at that time, at that night. It just doesn't. And that's kind of where I don't listen to him anymore. And I've heard him go after some of the policies that Trump is engaging in, and these policies are needed if you want to maintain an American nation. If you want to erase us from the map, which most of these people do on the left, we're no better than that. Well, I'll tell you what, if you couldn't use your phone and you couldn't say certain things on your phone and you couldn't go to your websites that you want to go to, and you wait till all of those fucking things are taken away from you. And you too will become a conservative, you fucking twits. You think you're going to be the ones that are allowed, and you're not. They're using you to destroy the country. That's what they're doing. And you don't realize that destroying the country means you too, you fucking assholes. So it's very fucked up. That's what I mean. That's why I say the context of why John F. Kennedy was assassinated is so important. If you worked at Starbucks and I bought a coffee, then I go to commit a crime and leave the cup. Right. I know we understand the complexities of transfer DNA. And that's why the scientific community, look at Amanda Knox was convicted on transfer DNA. Amanda Knox, and it got overturned by the Italian Supreme Court. There was a black guy that was convicted on transfer DNA that they found on the woman's breast who had been raped and murdered. But they just like in the Kohlberger case, just like in the Amanda Knox case, there were other DNAs that were undeterminate fucking people. DNAs in association with the crime that were undeterminate. Therefore, there was no way you could eliminate those people as being involved in the crime. Just because you couldn't put a name to them doesn't exclude them from the fucking crime. Just in other words, okay, you got Brian Kohlberger's name. Well, Let me give you a place of 7 other fucking DNAs. 3 under the fingernail. That's 3. Hold up your fingers, folks. 3. Follow along here. 3 on the fucking fingernail. Blood on the sheath is 4. Blood on a hand railing is 5. Blood on a pair of gloves is 6. And as I like to always credit those that enlighten me, all the transfer DNA in the fucking gloves, inside the gloves, that's number 7. And none of those people were verifiably identified by the police. Therefore, the transfer DNA is moot, whether you can identify it or not, because including Koberger's, you have 8 fucking DNA samples, folks. How can you say he committed the crime of murder? At best, the most you could ever say is he may have been there. How do you put the knife in his hand to commit the crime? That's the fucking problem. Whether it's transfer DNA or not, folks, you have 8 associated samples of DNA. Who wielded the weapon? Somebody tell me, out of 8 fucking people, who's the stabber? Is it just one? Is it multiple people? How do you then only charge Brian Koberger with the act of 4 homicides? It's insane. Yeah. The thing with that's a woman selling context. She's got some nervous fucking worm in her brain, and she has nothing else better to do. And people want to. There are a lot of people that share that in common with her. Look, I know I'm a dickhead, but I don't put out here. I don't put stuff. Look, you see what's in the fucking chat room? Look at the screen, folks. This is a tragedy. There's 5.63 billion fucking morons on the internet. Okay? That's a count of all of these people in the fucking social media. How the fuck do we get 5.63 billion morons out here? And the reason we're all morons, folks, is because we don't understand the difference between thinking and believing. They've brainwashed us to believe shit. Well, but again, Marion, I'm not going to contradict your observation, but doing that and not identifying them doesn't exclude them from being involved in the murder. Would you agree with that, Marion? Marion makes a great point. And this is exactly the point that's going to be made in court. It was put in CODIS, which is why they didn't match Brian's. Fair enough. They didn't match them to anybody. But how do you exclude them from participating in the crime when their DNA is part of the crime scene? You see the conundrum there? It's another one of the world's oxymorons. That's exactly why Amanda Knox got off. That's exactly why the black individual that was convicted for raping and murdering his girlfriend got off. Exactly that reason. You know? Unidentified DNA at a crime scene on items that could be directly seen and associated with the crime itself is a window of fucking uh-oh. And then you fucking geniuses picked the fucking most microscopic piece of DNA evidence the world could even know about. Let's be clear. And you decide that evidence is conclusive evidence of that man committing that murder. It's beyond fucking stupid. It's evidence of nothing. It's circumstantial. That fucking transfer DNA does not prove Koberger did anything here. So how do you sentence a man to death when there's 6 unknown samples, okay? And then you got to remember the gloves. Gloves with blood on them, found outside the sliding glass door, would be full of transfer DNA inside the glove itself. How come that wasn't swabbed? I mean, here's a bunch of people that are finding the most microscopic piece of fucking evidence known to mankind. And not only did you have all of the people outside go through the house and policemen go through the house, Their crime scene investigators went through the house dressed like they were going on a fucking picnic. It's impossible. Now that's true. There was DNA all over the place, but they only went to places that could be associated with the crime scene. They didn't go and sample the washer and dryer for DNA. They didn't open up the refrigerator and check the milk, right? They didn't do that. They didn't go to the couch and swab the couch or the end tables. You see, William, that's the key to crime scene collection. You try to contain yourself to relevant areas and relevant items that could be directly related to the crime, and you work your way out from there. So that's an accurate statement. There was tons of DNA all over the place. Yeah. How many of it was blood on gloves? That seems like a fair place to look. How about a railing going from the second floor to the first floor? Well, that's relevant. Now we know Dylan admits to doing that. Was that transfer blood? In other words, did she have blood on her from a potential perpetrator? And she her arm rubbed the railing and it got on the railing? We don't know. We know she has a footprint outside of her door. And I've said this for years. I can make a more circumstantial case that Dylan Mortenson was involved than I can Brian Koberger. And I stand by that. Again, I don't know that she's guilty of a damn thing, and I'm not alleging that she is. But when you compare the available data that's been released, you can make a strong case that those two young women had something to do with it. Right? That may be. How come is that guy tied to Emma Bailey in some way? What's Q 1.4? Yeah, I find that to be, again, it's selling the narrative. It's selling the context that they're going to learn to believe in it. That's what's happening in your schools, folks. That's what's happening in your schools. Just think about people's view of Nazi Germany. Do people even know why that war started? Do people even have a fucking clue? Because it wasn't all Germany's fault. It literally wasn't. It was a whole bunch of things that coalesced into a situation to which they made the worst possible choice of all, to go to war. So, nobody whispered in his ear, attack Poland. Nobody did that. So they did this. They did do this, but there were so many ancillary issues that surrounded this particular issue that they chose to go to war. So they own that. But what a lot of people don't understand are the relevant issues that brought him to make that decision. People just think he was an evil dictator that wanted to rule the world. That may, in fact, be a way you can see the man. Okay? That may be what he eventually decided he was going to do. I'm not arguing that. But you got to understand the underlying reason. What caused Japan? Why wasn't Japan? How come people don't discuss Japan's reasons for going to war? Because they're right up there with fucking Germany. And why do you think Italy joined Germany? Well, because his reasons were the same reasons Hitler had. And most of it, folks, had everything to do with international politics, world trade, the control. It's so much more complex. But let's not think about any of these things. No, let's not give them air in the room. He was a miserable, murderous dictator. And that's what you end up with, folks. You end up with believing something. Now, I don't think it's wrong to believe Hitler was a horrible man. Don't get me wrong. I believe Christ was a good man. And it's so on that level of King sells if they say Brian Q14 is the unidentified male blood, not a Vic, not Brian's. All right, so kind of I that's what I'm saying. They've got unidentified male blood in several locations that would appear to be connected to the crime scene. Yeah, I wouldn't. Absolutely. That's exactly true, Steve. And we already know that she did have some tested that excluded her. And this is listen, folks, this is another filthy fucking trick that these people that think they're gods do. They said Brian was not excluded from the samples that they collected. Well, that's bullshit. Here on one hand, they're telling you this DNA is so conclusive, 5.67 fucking quadrillion to 1. And then when they go and look at the other DNA samples, oh, it can't be excluded. He can't be excluded from that. Yeah, that's true. Right. Right. He was excluded from the blood in the sheath. He was also excluded from underneath her fingernails. Right. Mr. Kohlberger also went to a doctor's appointment 2 days later. There's no indication and no statement that he had suffered any injuries whatsoever from any kind of confrontation. That's the problem with it right there. It's about winning or losing. It's not about truth. Yeah. And I as the prosecution, I as the investigator, I would not have looked outside of that home for a perpetrator. I just wouldn't have. There has anybody heard a description of doors that were forced, locks that were broken? Has anyone heard anything of the sort in this burglary that he's charged with? Cain B's The Purge. You got baptized under a tiny waterfall yet? I don't know what that is, Heather. I don't know what you mean by that. Pitbullpotamus is innocent. So can anybody indicate to me in anything that you've seen where the forced entry was on this flame, on this house? And I think the chat room is dead silent, right? Okay. So there's no statement, there's no evidence, there's nothing being argued that he pried the door open with his knife, or he jimmied the door, or he lifted it up off his hinges. Okay. There's no indication of any forced entry into this home at all. So we just have to make the assumption the door was left unlocked. Okay. Really? That's the assumption we have to accept. It was unlocked. These fucking girls left their doors unlocked. All right. What about the bedrooms that we all know had their own personal locks on them? Right? Didn't Dylan say she closed and locked her door? Huh. So is it safe to say then we have to accept that all the bedroom doors were unlocked except Dylan's? And this person just randomly opened up a door and went in and committed the crime, closed the door behind him and left? Then went downstairs or upstairs, whichever direction they went, and come upon another unlocked door and went in and committed a multiple homicide and then closed the door behind him and left? See, because of that, I say the crime scene was a closed crime scene. And whether the murderer was pre-positioned in that home or murderers or let into that home, okay, or let into that home, then I cannot understand a person from the outside coming in from a fucking Hyundai Elantra at 4:08 a.m. There's just no evidence that even makes sense. It doesn't add up. I've been saying this for years. It don't add up. How about the purported weapon? That doesn't add up either. A person that's committed to commit, I can see an argument and you're killing one or two people, but this was fucking intentional. This was intentional. And you walked into a crime scene with your big fucking badass weapon of war in a sheath that you kept in your hand, meaning that you went into your fucking crime scene with a gun and you kept your bullets in your fucking pocket, Barney Fife. You went into a place to intentionally commit murder and you carried a knife inside of a sheath in your hand? Really? Well, how the fuck why would you do that? As an ex-criminal, I can't get over that fucking aspect of this accusation. What are you talking about? That knife sheath there's no way you could have went into that house like that and then leave the knife sheath behind. I could see if the knife sheath was yanked, okay, and it could have broke something. I do think they do. And personally, I don't think anybody went into this house to commit 4 homicides. I don't buy that at all. I believe that, like they said at the beginning, this was a crime of passion. I don't think that there was any intent to commit any murder whatsoever. But once the first two murders were committed and they were confronted, the other two murders had to follow. That's what I think happened here. Call me fucking crazy. I really don't care. That adds up. That totally adds up. Maybe even if there was a man that was hiding in a closet or hiding in one of the rooms or hiding in Dylan or hiding in the laundry room. I don't believe that there's a way in hell that somebody came in from the outside and did this and then walked out. I believe them walking out is indicative of them being comfortable with what they just did, comfortable in the fact that they wouldn't get caught, comfortable in the fact that they could get away. That level of comfortability after that kind of a crime, how many fucking crimes have you seen, folks, or heard of where the person isn't fleeing the scene? And their only argument of fleeing the scene is an Elantra at a high rate of speed? How much fucking high rate of speed can a Hyundai Elantra produce? Come on, man. It doesn't add up. There's nothing about this crime that adds up. And it's even worse when you start looking at what they're trying to sell you to make it make sense. None of that makes sense. It makes absolutely no sense. I would be much happier if they told me that Mr. Koberger parked his car over here and walked to the crime scene to commit, or anybody, any fucking buddy, and then committed this crime by coming in through the outside. But no, they got this big fucking crazy concocted. And again, I'm going to say Occam's razor, okay? The simplest solution is almost always the solution. The simplest answer is almost always the answer. And these people have complicated the fuck out of everything. Not just everything that they allege is all complicated. Turned off his phone, this and car here, car there, blah, 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 but no direct evidence. You know something, William? Why not, when the girl's looking out that door and Dylan says he looked right at me? Why not take Dylan out of the picture? It makes no sense. You can't explain that away. You can't, I mean, he's walking towards me, not running, not in a panic, walking towards me. Why didn't he kill her? Because what is the only answer? If that's true, okay? If the perpetrator walked towards her after just slaying 4 people and looked right at her, can someone explain what changed within a very few seconds? What changed? Yeah, he was too tired. Yeah. I think that knife belonged to one of the poor victims, to be very honest with you. I don't think that anybody went up in that bedroom upstairs to commit a murder. I think that there was a falling out amongst the 3 girls, Dylan, and the 2 women upstairs. I think that jealousy and that rage and that being cold-shouldered, I think that played a role in this. And I could be completely wrong. Let me just say that this is my thoughts based on the data that we have, which, means nothing. I'm theorizing. As I say, I don't like to see people do, but I'm only theorizing with the evidence that's been presented to us and verified. That's it. There's no talk of people from the Banfield being in this house. There's no evidence. There's no emotion. There's no fucking objection to any evidence outside of that bullshit PCA. Right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Dave. You or is it Nicole? Here's how Dylan didn't see the knife in the killer's hand. They left without the sheet. That's a good observation. Talk about the super fit Brian was. Yeah, he was super fucking fit. We got Kaylee was the one that's right. They're right there, number 12. What I'm saying is, if you guys are going to go on a circumstantial case, can't you give me something that you can verify circumstantially to be part of the crime? To me, that would be fair circumstantial evidence. I shouldn't have to have your circumstantial evidence be based on woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? I can place her at the crime, right? Her statements are very conflicting. She acted like somebody that had something to hide. I was so drunk. I was this, I was that, I was blah, 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 blah. But can anybody show me in the conversation between her and Bethany the actions of a sleeping, drunk, drugged up fucking person? Can anybody show me in any of the texts that we've seen Dylan Mortenson fitting the description of what she then later went and told the police? You see, this is why I say, when you want to make a case based on circumstantial evidence, I'm going to say to you, the first thing you do is you blame it on other things. Your actions or inactions are blamed on things that you suggest are out of your control. That's what you do, folks. You may not remember it lying about taking the last cookie, or maybe that wasn't an issue in your house. You might be lying about putting the fucking milk container back in the refrigerator empty. I don't know what issues you might have had in your home, right? But there's always a story attached to your lie. That's right. Those girls were cleared before a shred of evidence came back, and then the whole time was based on what they said. It makes no sense. Nothing they said makes sense. In all fairness, what did they say that makes sense? How could somebody drunk out of their mind, as she argues, right, make a statement at all? I didn't see anything. Why is she telling people? That's the problem with another problem with the liar. Is the liar somehow makes themselves part of the fucking scene. Oh, no, I didn't put the milk away and empty. Listen, I guess some of you know I had a woman, an ex-girlfriend, who was staying here, but she was cleaning my house for spring cleaning. And I don't object to anybody eating or whatever. I haven't got shit in my house. So I made this chuck roast. I've been wanting to make one of these, and I finally bought this. Anyway, I make this chuck roast, and it's 2.5 pounds. Which should be 3 good meals for me, right? Well, I cooked this chuck roast, and I cut out a reasonable portion, and I add my sides with it. I eat it, and I say to her, grab some of that if you want. I'm not hungry. Well, I wake up the next morning, okay, and that 2.5 pound chuck roast is now the size of a fucking silver dollar wrapped up and put back in the fridge. You literally had 2 or 3 bites, and it was gone. And let me just say, I would have been happier if she ate the whole thing, because I really, really look forward to this roast. And yeah, I said, what is this? She goes, that's the chuck roast. I go, there's 2 or 3 bites here. Why didn't you just finish it? No, there's more there. I got it in my hand. I'm looking at it. You're standing right there. What do you mean there's more? I go, why didn't you just finish the damn thing? Now you left just enough chuck roast for me to want more chuck roast that I can't have. She's like, you're fucked up. I said, but we already knew this. We already knew I was fucked up. And I invited you to eat dinner. I would have been happier if you ate all of it. Don't you understand? You left just enough for it to be useless. It's not big enough for a meal by any stretch of the imagination. And it's just enough of a snack to make you really want more, because it was delicious. It really was. It was delicious. I cooked that thing for like 5 hours. This meat was so tender and so juicy. It was incredible. And you left me a silver dollar's worth. And then all of these stories start coming out. I don't know. But here's the problem, Sherlock Homie. Was her view from him walking from the common living area towards her? We still don't know under where she saw this person, because you can't walk towards somebody without saying, I peeked out my door and saw him coming down the stairs, right? So we can kind of conclude that the direction this person had come to her from wasn't, I seen him walking towards me from the sliding glass door. She didn't say that. So when you eliminate walking towards me from the kitchen, from the sliding glass door, you eliminate that area. When she doesn't say, I observed him coming down the stairs towards me, she doesn't say that, so that excludes it. Her statement is he was walking towards me, which means the only room that he could be coming from is the living room. And that room is about 6 inches taller than the floor she is standing on. So let's go back now to her fucking description. He was 5'10" or taller than me. And if you say that he was walking towards me, the hallway isn't a place to be walking. It's a place to make a step. And I placed a video out there to show. It's more of a lip. It's a step. I got a video out there that proves that it's a sizable step when it comes to, it ain't an inch, it ain't 2 inches, it ain't 3, it's at least 6 inches. Okay. Now the standard staircase is 7 1/4. So it isn't a step in the relationship of a staircase, but it's a step up from one section of the home to the other of at least 6 inches, right? So now you need to understand, where was she observing this man as he walked towards her? And if it was from the living area, then his real height was 5'4" or so, which, if that's accurate, and it has to be accurate, then she was describing a much shorter man. That much shorter man was also described in September of 2021 by 2 young women that were confronted by a knife-wielding attacker that one of the young women in her bedroom kicked in the stomach and he fled. So in other words, Dylan's description is consistent with the attacker witnessed in September of 2021 by 2 young college girls that lived in a frat house or a sorority house, whatever you want to call them. Okay? Dylan's description was more consistent with that man. So it needs to be cleared up. When you say walking towards him, what do you mean? Here's the other thing. Now we're hearing she peeked out her door. Somehow the word peeked has been ingested here. Okay. So when you peek out of Dylan's door, let's be very clear. The kitchen is directly across from her room. The staircase is to the left of her bedroom door. The living area is to the right of her bedroom door. In order to peek out of her door, the only view available to her would have been to the right, because her door handle is on the left and the door pulls towards you. Okay? Left-handed handle, you turn the knob and you pull the door towards you, which puts it in the direction of your right arm. Okay? So that means when she peeked out, the only view available to her would have been a man walking towards her from the common living area. Therefore, the fucking 6 inches matters. When she said he was about 3 feet away from me, that indicates the common fucking room. It matters. She closed and locked her door. Those little nuances do have a play in how you defend somebody against any case. Facts matter, folks. We need to know what she saw. And based on what we've been told, we can deduce what she saw without her even saying it. Right? Like, people are, well, you could deduce that's Koberger's car. No, in fact, you cannot deduce that. There is no identifying feature on that vehicle that makes it Brian's car. There's no bumper sticker. There's no parking sticker for fucking park. There's no college sticker. There's no dent. There's no missing hubcap. There's nothing to make the images that they're showing you unique to Mr. Koberger. It's just a car, a white car. Could it be an Elantra? Sure. Could also be a fucking Toyota Corolla or a Toyota Civic or a Honda Civic. It could also be a Ford Fusion. It could also be. But even if it is an Elantra, how do you make that Brian Koberger's Elantra? There needs to be a uniqueness in observation that gives you that fucking ability. Not just this bullshit idea, well, we got transfer DNA. No, it's not how it works. Let me see. For fake crying Marion, but I can tell you what happened at Q at 4A. Operator, oh no, but someone is passed out. Get the fuck out of here. I thought the living room was down, but you're right, it's higher. Yeah, I wouldn't lie to folks. Look, I sometimes make mistakes, folks. I'm a human being. I sometimes fall into the category of believing and not thinking. I'm a human being. I put as much maximum effort as I can into thinking And I really, really mean it when I say I don't know if this guy committed the crime. The Gilgo case. I'm fairly confident that man is the serial killer. I'm fairly confident that even though the cops fucked off for 10 years and let other women get murdered, I don't give a fuck if they're hookers or if they're high society. They're equal. Nobody should be fucking murdered. Nobody should be ignored. Police corruption should not interfere with the duties of fucking enforcing the law. There's enough information that you can reasonably suspect that there is, this is his DNA. And there's no way to fucking doubt that. This is how we collected it. That's reasonable. You follow him around. We got his phone. We got where he bought the phone. That's reasonable. Right? Those are reasonable points. You keep going down the road. Where do you have that in this case? Show me where that exists, where you can reasonably place Koberger at the scene of that crime. Take away the transfer DNA, and now look at everything else, and what are you left with? You're left with a fucking story. An unverifiable story that only comes together and might make the most remote sense when you connect it to a transfer DNA sample. What you have to ignore is being transfer DNA. And you have to entrench yourself. DNA is DNA, right? He called the relatives of the victims to gloat. I don't know who said that. There's no proof of that. Where's that? He called the relatives of the victims to gloat. Who did? It's got to be Gilgo is what you're talking about or something, right? Yeah, she is saying that it happened earlier. Okay, so yeah. He had a burner phone. You're right. Supposedly was on a video camera, however, Anne hasn't seen. Yeah, but he also stated that there wasn't any video. When she said in all the 51 terabytes of data with video, does any of that show Brian Koberger or his car? Or can you conclusively? And he said no. And he corrected her. He said it was like 61 or 64 terabytes. And that's when she asked the question. Officer Payne, in any of the video evidence that you have, can you conclusively determine that's Brian Koberger in that video? He said no. So, and Gilgo, well, yeah, there's supposed to be pictures of the car around the house, but they're not going to put that in as evidence. And I'm going to tell you why they're not going to put it in as evidence. This is another thing that drives me crazy, that people that are on either side, innocent or guilty, but mainly the guilty people, why is it that the only images they show you are so fucking blurry that you got to believe them? I don't need to believe nobody, okay? I don't want to believe in shit. I want to see it is believing. Show me, motherfucker. There's other video. I guarantee there's other video and other images that for whatever reason they're not going to present. And the reason they're not going to present it, okay, is because the other video and images of the car around the property is an 11 to 13 Hyundai Elantra. That's my summation of what you're seeing here. Well, an unconscious person really, I don't know that you would need to have sirens and stuff, I guess. But just flashing lights is enough in the early morning hours. Like, well, it was early afternoon, right? It was late morning, the end of the morning. Yeah. But those are things that you can really, ignore. It's a point. It's a good observation. Does it have any bearing? Maybe not. I still afford the list guy. I still do too. So far, what they've released to the public and the means under which they investigated the stuff that they've shared, it fulfills the argument of reasonable doubt. Right? It removes that. So, look at how long it took to catch the Golden Gate Killer. Turned out to be a cop. Anything can happen in true crime. You're right, Dave. You're right. When you say the Gilgo case, the Gilgo, whatever you want to say, it does seem very damning. No, and that's the problem with our law enforcement. That's the problem with our governmental actions. Come on, man. Let's be honest, ladies, right? How many of you even realize that the only reason Planned Parenthood was created was to kill the Negro? I don't know why. I met a lot of women, they're shocked when they hear that. But go look up a woman named Margaret Sanger. She invented and created Planned Parenthood. And here's another thing too. And I'm telling you, these people in charge laugh at us like we're a bunch. They laugh like hyenas at you and me. And this is because we don't think. We don't think. Let me ask you a question, folks. How can you plan a parenthood for a child you're going to eliminate? Is it me? Am I that much of a dumb fuck that part of being called a parent means you have a child? Am I that fucking stupid that parenthood requires a child? Or can you be a fucking parent with no kid? I don't understand. How the fuck you guys all got tricked into this nonsense of Planned Parenthood? I don't get it. I don't understand, ladies. How did that happen? I don't know. Ain't no one ever called me a parent before I had a child. Once I had the child, I was a parent. Right? Proud parent of fucking class of 2026. Honor roll student. But don't you have to have a fucking kid? Right. Reproductive rights. Wear a fucking condom. Take the morning after pill. I don't know. Use a diaphragm. What the? I don't even, look, I'm not a scientist in that regard. But I'm telling you, these people that run these your higher ranking, if they laugh at all of us as a bunch of fucking ridiculous fucking fools. Planned Parenthood. Reproductive rights. Well, stop fucking. I mean, I don't even know. Is there a law that says you got to fuck? Where's that law? Can somebody please show me that law? Because if there's a law saying that you got to fuck, ladies, you all owe me. You all owe me in ways you can't even imagine. If there's a law mandating you fuck, I need to see it. Okay? Because you're all in fucking jeopardy now by old Sarge. No matter who you are. I'm coming for you. Where's the fucking law? Somebody pass me a law women gotta fuck. Would you please? I mean, for fuck's sake, reproductive rights. Keep your feet on the floor, not in the air. I know I'm fucked up, folks. I can't help myself. I'm just kind of fucked up, and I got to live with myself, and it's fucked up. That's why I take a nap every day, so I can ignore myself. Right? It's just enough to make a fucking person crazy. Can you imagine? Talk about oxymorons. Holy shit, reproductive rights, my fucking balls. Okay? You want reproductive rights? You know what my advice to you is? The same thing I told the fucking judge when I was brought to court being accused of being the father of a girl's child. You know what I told the court? I said, Your Honor, ain't no way I could be the father of this child. And he says, and what makes you so sure? I said, stomach acid prevents pregnancy. And you had never seen a more bewildered look on a grown man's fucking face. His head went off to the side. You could see the blank fucking look in his eyes. And he's trying to fathom the fucking point that I just made. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, Your Honor, stomach acid prevents pregnancy because she gave me a blowjob. I never fucked that girl at all. I almost got put in jail for contempt of court. True story, folks. True story. Stomach acid prevents pregnancy, ladies. Trust me on that one. If I could say I know anything for sure, that I do know for sure. Not only that, not only do I know, here's why I know that for sure. Because after a bunch of argument back and forth and a couple trips down to the fucking magistrate's office, which I found to be joyful, because I was using Bill Clinton as my defense to not have to turn over a fucking swab. They eventually told me you're going to be swabbed or you're going to spend your time in jail until you give us a swab. And I eventually let them take the swab. And that swab came back saying, you are not the father, which further confirms the fucking point that I made in court. Stomach acid prevents pregnancy. That's true. Yeah. I mean, you don't got to be a genius to understand that one. And I can show you court documentation that proves it and the results of a DNA test that said I was not the father. I'm telling you, the look on his face was priceless. How could you be so sure you're not the father? Well, Your Honor, stomach acid prevents pregnancy. I thought I was being polite without saying the word blowjob in court. Okay. He'd already banged the gavel a few times because when I first got in the courtroom, there had to be this woman weighing 400 pounds sitting across from me. Right? The tables are set up and facing the judge. So to my left, the far end of that table was this big, giant woman, which is fine. People are people. And when he brought the court to order, I raised my hand. He said, yes. I said, Your Honor, you're not suggesting I had sex with her, are you? He's like banging on. She's from the district attorney's office. I was like, well, I didn't sleep with her. She's not the one accusing you. Oh, I said, oh, good. Yeah, because I know I didn't sleep with her. Yeah, I'm a motherfucker. I can't help it. I mean, somebody's got to bring these places to heal. Oh my gosh. I wish I had. See, back then there weren't cell phones, or that would have been the perfect time to take a picture. I could have had my phone on record and laid that out, and then I would have been a YouTube sensation. Right? Just think about saying that, or a TikTok sensation. I'd probably be a billionaire. That was priceless. Yeah, he was mad at me because I said I didn't fuck her. No way would I fuck her. And then I guess I could have had a little more couth, but I don't know. I was outraged that I was even there because I knew the girl that was accusing me, and I know that that's all we did. I know that for a fact. It's my dick. I know where it was, and it was never in her. So that was my story because it was true. And so to be accused, then you yourself know. I don't know what kind of a crazy horror she is, but she should also have known that we never committed the act of coitus, right? And yet she brings me to court accusing me of being the father of her child. I was lit, folks. I was ready, gunning for bear. And yeah, that worked out well. That's true, Suzanne. And this is, look, people are going to make decisions in life. I've made decisions in life. You're either going to regret them or you're going to one day come to peace with yourself. I've made some very, very bad decisions in life. There's no question about it. I've had some very, very bad excuses. I used to sound like Dylan Mortenson, okay? So I get it. I get it. That's why it's hard to get anything over on me because I've pretty much done the shit you shouldn't have done. I'm the guy your fucking mother's warned you about. The dumbass, right? Yeah. So, back to the story here. We got a lot of viewers in here. I want to welcome all you people that put up with me. There's 29 of us at Twitter. There's about 100 of us over on YouTube, or just slightly less. It wouldn't hurt, and it's not required, but it really wouldn't hurt if you hit like. On this stream specifically because I'd like people to start asking hard questions and trying to understand things. Yeah, that happens. That happens to a lot of your federal top prosecutors. They're appointed by each president, and Trump did fire him. The guy probably had it coming. And well, we do have 84 likes in there. That's kind of awesome. I appreciate that. I think when you get over 100, the algorithm starts offering your stream to strangers or something. I don't know that to be true, but that's kind of the impression I've gotten from other people that I've streamed with. Trump fire, yeah, and he should fire that guy. I appreciate that. The cat's meow. Yeah, it's not hard to talk about some of the things that I talk about. I just really, more importantly, I wish people would place more emphasis on spotting where their belief is being fucking tickled. Once you can start to identify that they're trying to play to your belief, They're trying to get you to believe what they're saying. Once you can start spotting that in advertisements, in news, um, I mean, look what they do with advertising. Always trying to convince guys that you're going to get the next prettiest woman if you buy this, if you buy this, if you do that. Just think about that. And men believe that, and they do it subconsciously. We've been so convinced to act on what we believe that we forgot how to think. They've taken that away from us. Listen, I mean, I don't like I brought a lot of fucking topics. Well, the biggest heart that I ever broke was my own. So let me just say, when you're one of the guys like I was, and to some extent still am, the heart you break the most is your own. Well, I don't know what mistakes he made. I mean, he didn't get caught on cam. His phone didn't report at that house. His phone doesn't show a location of him being at that house. I mean, so I don't really see mistakes made on behalf of the defendant, Mr. Kohlberger, right? I just don't see that, because those are accusations. Those are suggestions of what happened. Yeah, but we allow that, William. It's not spying on us. That's a complete mischaracterization of what's happening. You've given those companies the ability to do that. You agree to that. I've been a big proponent of this for a long time, to the point where I haven't talked about it in a long time. But these user agreements are why this is happening. But if Americans all stood tall, if tens of millions of people said to X, to Elon, you delete or you lock down and stop using our information for anything than for us to access our account. You don't need to know where I live. You don't need to know my fucking phone number for me to use X. You don't need to know what my buying habits are. It's none of your motherfucking business. This is a town hall of discussions. Return it to that completely, or we'll just walk away. If many millions of Americans did that to Apple, they did that to fucking Elon, they did that to fucking Windows, they did that to their local store, right? Imagine that. The freedom that you would then find yourself surrounded by would be overwhelming. You wouldn't know what to do with yourself. We believe that the only way to use X is through user agreements that allow them to spy on us. And they're not spying on us, that allow them to track us. Let's be honest. It's not spying. Spying is surreptitiously observing the actions or behaviors of another, right? Elon is from South America. My body, my choice. Ignorant shit. It's not your body. It's the baby's body, and it has no choice. That's true. So my argument to a lot of people, and it seems like nobody's got the balls to do anything anymore. But as a group, there should be millions of us that are saying, look, we're not doing this anymore. Take your app and stick it up your ass. And if enough people start to do that with user agreements, you can't even imagine how much work and effort the government wouldn't have to do. A lot of the things Trump is dealing with are issues that really are rooted in some of the most basic actions that we take every day as a group of citizens, right? Yeah, I never really followed Edward Snowden. I just know this because it's obvious to me. That's why, folks, like, I was out with my car. I'm a car guy. I got an old 45-year-old car. And I'm out driving. I got a high horsepower engine. It's like a race car for the street, but it's more race car than street car. Anyway, and apparently a few of my friends seen me, and they messaged me on Facebook. And, they're car friends, so they don't know me. But I get back to the house. I turn on the computer, or I don't know. Anyway, I go to the computer, and there's Facebook messages. I was like, well, why didn't you call me? You got my phone number. I don't have Facebook I don't have anything on my phone. I don't have any app to communicate. I don't have TikTok. I don't have Instagram. I don't have nothing on my phone. That's it. It's a phone and a text machine for business. I said, so, how do you guys not know that about me? I go to a fucking bonfire and I don't take my phone out of the car because there's nothing on there. I'm here. So it's fucking weird, man. I don't know if they're billing you for that. It's a 1980 Corvette that I've lightened to 2,975 pounds. Started out at about 3,400. And then I have a custom built small block 434 cubic inch Chevy engine in it. And a nice 4-link suspension in the rear, tubular control arms, multi-port sequential fuel injection, something never offered on the small block. This car is terrifyingly fast. It's fucking awesome, man. Are there faster cars? Sure. There's a lot cars that are a lot faster than this, but to have a car you could drive anywhere at any time, I could drive it in the winter if I wanted, but I don't want to deal with road salt and rot and issues like that recur to a frame. So the power is overwhelming. 650 horse, 600 foot-pounds of torque into a 411 gear ratio back end. The car is just crazy. It runs 10/8 in the quarter mile. Probably a little faster if I had a transmission brake, but when I run a quarter mile at the track, I'm sitting at the tree at idle. Just so you know, at idle. And when the light turns green, I punch it. Just like you would do on the street. And I can run 10/8 on a no prep surface. On a prep surface, I'd probably be 10/7. And if I had a transmission brake, which would allow me to put that motor at 4,000 or 5,000 RPMs before I took off, it would smoke. I beat one of those easily, Mr. Tandy. I got a video of racing one of those Hellcats. And the reason I beat him handily is because you weigh more than 1,000 pounds more than me. And you only got about 60 or so horsepower more than me. So, but you probably weigh north of 1,000 pounds, probably more like 1,200 pounds more than me. And not to say those aren't a fast car. But I got a video of me racing a red one. And it was incredible. I was unsure what was going to happen. I was pretty sure I was going to win, but you never know. That was an awesome race. And I had the C8 Corvette. I kept that for 3 summers and then sold it. Made some good money on it. And that C8 Corvette is a dream car. That car is, you can't even find a fault with that car. I don't even know how you could crash that car. You'd have to be an idiot. Never been in a car that stuck to the road like that. Yep, I had a 2021 Corvette, the mid-engine car. And I sold it. I kept it for the summer of 21, summer of 22, summer of 23, and I sold it in October of 23. I ended up getting possession of it in March 28th of 2021. Yeah. The old car I have is an 80 Corvette. One of the slowest models ever made. And they're even the C8 Corvette, even their Z06, the new one. I'm easily as fast, if not faster, than almost all the lineup of Chevy Corvettes. It's pretty awesome. And the exhilaration, when you got under 3,000 pounds and that kind of horsepower, just the amount of the adrenaline that pumps into you when you stomp on that gas pedal, it's fucking awesome. It's like a drug. So, what was I going to say here? Let's see. I have one comment over here. We have a bunch of likes, which is good. I think I got to be up to what? 94. We're 6 people short of likes to get this thing into the algorithm. I've raced a bunch of. Oh, you got a Honda Dream. I thought you said Harley. Yeah, the new C8 ZR1. I agree with you. Corvette rides like a log truck. Not the new one. You'd be so amazed at that new car, you would probably buy it. The car drives like a Cadillac. And then when you stomp on it and go into turns, it's definitely a fucking race car, like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or a Porsche. They're winning all the track records around the world with that car. It's an incredible vehicle. The new C8 with the engine behind you. It's stunning. And it doesn't ride like a log with fucking tires on it. Not even close. Very, very comfortable, very roomy for 2 people. Yeah, it's a well laid out car. I love that car. But The idea that I drove it for 3 years, put 10,000 miles on it, all right, because it was a summer car only, and then sold it for quite a bit more than I paid for it was irresistible. I had to sell the car. I had no choice. It was like, yeah, I got to get rid of the car. And now I'm the one. I had two Corvettes. How many Corvettes can one guy have? You know what ends up happening is the one of them won't get used. If you got more than one, I don't care if you got 5 Corvettes, 4 of them aren't going to get used. Yeah, so my Corvette was too, but only in the summer times. I didn't drive it in the snow. I didn't even drive it when it rained. I don't drive this one when it rains either. The weather's bad. I don't go out in it. And the main reason on this car is I have the tires on the back don't have tread in them like you would see for a car tire. And so when you drive in the rain, this thing is like driving in the snow. You just can't get any traction, and the car is dangerous. It's a real danger to drive this in the rain. So, yeah, and I live in New York where the climate is, we get all 4 seasons up here. But no tornadoes, no hurricanes, no earthquakes. We don't have any of that shit. Thanks for stopping in there, the cat's meow. Yeah, and I'm kind of really to the end of the stream here. It's 2:01. I like to get my I took some pork chops out for fucking dinner and lunch. I got to figure out what I want for the side. Not too sure if I'm gonna have a potato or I'm not sure. Lambos are nice, but some of the prices of these cars don't have to cost that much. You get into those Lambos and start breaking down the mechanics, you're gonna find parts from fucking Saab. You're gonna find parts from fucking Jaguar. You're gonna find parts in those cars that are common everyday parts. They're charge you $5,000 for. You can go to AutoZone and buy it for fucking $15. Some of those exotic cars, they look, they do have their prestige, they do have their place, but you lose nothing by buying a C8 Corvette versus those. But you save hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah, where do you get it? Look, imagine it's a Chevy Corvette. How many dealers around the country? Imagine taking a Lamborghini across the country and it breaks down. Who fixes it? Where do you go? You can't bring it to Cletus, but you can bring a Chevy to a Chevy dealer that are all over the country. That's the other thing about owning that rear engine Corvette. The Mustang too. Same thing with a Mustang. Extremely powerful. Same thing with the Hellcat. You know, are there other cars that are exotic that might be considered better or what? Yeah, but you want to be somewhat practical in your hobby. I don't want to have something that I have a hobby around that I can only get the parts from some fucking Eastern European country that's almost being overrun by Russia. I don't want anything like that. Or I can only order the parts on a certain day during the week in Japan. I don't want that either. I want to be able to enjoy what I have. So Mustangs, the Chargers, the Dodge, the Chevy. But to me, if you're looking for a mid-engine supercar, the experience, the ability to do everything a supercar does, that's the shit right there. Because that's what separates the Dodge Hellcat. That's what separated the Corvette from being considered a supercar, is the engine was always in front. Now with the engine in back as they are, forget about it. Forget about it. Yeah. So, all right, folks. I appreciate all of you that came in here. If any of you on your way out want to hit that like, that would be awesome. Get that shit to 100. I think there's a lot of questions surrounding Dylan and her actions that morning, which are just insane. And it would be nice to have a better understanding of what happened there, instead of this narrative being pushed down our throat, whether you're guilty or innocent, and then all of this other data being ignored as if it doesn't matter. So, thanks for coming in. Thanks for hanging out. We'll talk with you folks again. Everybody, stay out of trouble. But if you get in trouble, well, no, be good. But if you're not going to be good, don't get caught. Then you won't find yourself in trouble. All right. Talk to you.